How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Blue Shifting, and welcome to what I think is going to be the finale of Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 2. I feel like we're just at the end. I don't foresee myself stopping till this is over. So we're pretty much at the end game. We've walked into the lion's den. We're here with Mion. We had a lot of history kind of unravel, talking about the Sonozaki family, kind of how they got to this position, how they've had a lot of success, but how they inherited a lot of baggage, both from the ancient past and from World War II. It was really cool talking to some of you in the comment section about like the reality of things like Unit 731, and also just overall like maybe some of the reasons why there was like some of the lines weren't voiced, which we know like from the first game. You told me how there's a restoration patch where they try to maintain the original content, but because some of it was removed when the sprites were updated and the lines were recorded, it's missing. And that's just obviously that's cool to talk about and go over. But yeah, it's definitely a part of the game which is really neat to know about. It's also just it's interesting to be able to have a story that is so unique and so wonderfully frank about stuff, especially when it can be tough to learn about history when there's a lot of concerted and like focused effort to kind of overlook and overwash it. And it happens with American history too, and you guys reminded me even of some of that a little bit, which is always important to understand and to recognize that like you're always going to hear the softer, happier side, especially if you're learning from like your own history. Like you're always going to have it presented to you with the best of intentions, regardless of whether or not you're trying to be open and honest about it. And there's a line to be walked there. It's funny because I remember so there's a lot of like some of the movements like Make America Great Again for Americans. And it's funny because one of the arguments I remember hearing way at the beginning when that started becoming a trend was people were talking about how they hated how history classes were trying to always paint the America as the bad guy. And it's like, that's really funny because it just means that people who are saying that, it means that they've drunk the Kool-Aid of propaganda and just have this wholehearted belief that, you know, like America is such a great nation, it can't possibly be wrong or evil. And it's like, well, no, we've definitely made some very questionable choices and maybe done some very questionable things. In fact, I was remembering and reviewing like some of the historical decisions that were made during the like 1700, 1800s, and 1900s for the American. So like the American nation, when they're pretty new. And you gotta remember, like there's stuff that we did was pretty crazy. Like we went over to Japan and forced them to start trading. This is like well before World War II, right? Like that was something we used like military cannons that basically said, you start trading or we're gonna start shooting. And then we did that in Japan too, and Korea, like everywhere out there. And like there's also like micro wars and microaggressions that were used as excuses to just start attacking people and taking their stuff. Like a lot of nations were doing that, but it's like those are things that you don't read about in American history because it looks terrible, but they really happened. Like it's not even like, oh, like maybe some people think it happened. It's like, no, there's legitimate like testimony. There were Americans who were involved that were proud of it. So yeah, no, the history's full of just real crappy stuff. So that's something I could never get behind, is this idea of willful ignorance as a political platform. It's terrifying to me. It's something we also see happening a lot in Russia as well, because it's pretty clear, even if you've been paying marginal attention, that in the past like 2 decades, the narrative and the way that like Russia talks about its own history and the history of its surrounding nations is very different, and is being now utilized to try and justify the really aggressive actions they've taken. And again, that's like in America, we're probably going to start doing the same thing because like we're entering this new nationalistic, like imperialistic, basically time of history apparently, where it's just like, I don't know, it's like we completely have forgotten what the history's taught us, so I'm a little worried about that. Anyway, other than that, a few other things about the story, because I've already gotten off the rails, so this is a great start. But a few things that have been noted. It's a combination of things that people have said and thoughts that I've had since then. And there was a couple disturbing ones that I've had. Again, some were things that intentionally or not I thought of after reading and going through the comments, and other things that I've had on my own one of the ones I had on my own was I didn't like how open Mion's being, because in my head I was like, she's being her formal like leader self, almost like I said, I called it her other mask, her leadership mask. But even a leader like her, like if she's just in that role, it feels odd that she would be so upfront with all this information, because these are basically considered like family secrets. Now, granted, they're family secrets that kind of help to explain some of like the crappy stuff that they've had to deal with, and could be seen as a way of kind of generating sympathy. But a lot of it's also plainly stuff that they want to keep secret. Like, it's kind of like as a family, they wish to keep it secret. And so it makes me wonder if she's willing to share all this openly, or she basically said like, hey, ask any question, I'll answer it. And she's answering it. It kind of gave me the chill thinking of, wait a minute. If she's willing to just answer any question, it's almost as if she's confident it won't matter. That it could seem like someone who's defeated, who's just spilling the beans. Or it could be somebody who knows that we don't have a way out of this, that we are trapped, and we'll never have an opportunity to share it. So she can tell us everything she wants, because there's no way we can ever pass it on. So that's what I was thinking is kind of creepy. And then somebody else kind of mentioned a little bit. I think it might have been an accidental, like kind of a spoiler. Maybe kind of not though, just kind of playing a hinting game, which I get. Just be careful with that. But they pointed out how like it's interesting how like she's had so many people at her command, and how like when she's here at the house, there's like nobody here, and that got me thinking here. I was like, okay, wait a minute. So we have the cops that are supposedly surrounding the house, and I got a lot of comfort for Keiichi and Rena to like because they've gone into the situation, because they had the security of like, oh, there's cops nearby, right? Well, what if Mion has an informant in the police station, right? And that informant kind of told them what was going on. So what if she has a counterforce established already? So what if we are sitting in here assuming that we're going to be having cops coming to our rescue if something goes wrong, but then things are going to go wrong and no rescue is going to come because the police force outside is already being neutralized. And since they are operating outside their jurisdiction anyway, like maybe this, like there won't be any official help coming either. And then the final kind of cookie cutter fell into place too, where someone mentioned a 4D chess move. And I was like, you know what? That's actually a fairly good point. What if Rena is involved in this? And what if this is all just a big maneuver? What if Rena is on the side of Mion and they're coordinating all of this? Like Rena confronted her and said, hey, you've made some mistakes and you're going to get called out here. It could be crazy, but we know Mion's a good actor. So what if they orchestrated this whole thing? Because they're like, well, okay, let's take this situation. Let's find out who our enemies are, get them all in one place and take them out. So yeah, maybe this is all a giant 4D chess move, and we're going to turn, and like we're going to see Mion and Rena just laughing like maniacal demons, and that's the end. So yeah, fun stuff. Let's see what happens. It's time for us to go. Let's pull the rest off and see what happens. So buckle up. Mion didn't sit back down. She smoothly opened the paper door on the porch. A refreshing breeze began to cleanse the damp air filling the room. Mion quietly gazed out the wide yard for quite a while. On her shoulders was something I could never imagine the normal Mion carrying. It was the heavy, truly heavy history of Hinamizawa, of Onikakushi, weighing down on them. What kind of words could I possibly say to a Mion like that? Rena wasn't saying anything to her either. Only the voices of the cicadas drowned out the silence. At last, after a long period of nothing, Mion murmured,
この5年間の連続事件ね。私が直接関わったものもあるし、間接的に関わったものもある。
Yeah.
いくつかは園崎家だけでなく、他の御三家の君吉家や古出家が関わっているものもあるけど、そのすべての中心に私がいたと思う。
Okay. So they were orders from the heads of the different families, but ultimately, like she and the Sonozaki family were kind of the core. Basically, maybe the Furude family and the Kimiyoshi families ordered these things. And in fact, that's actually kind of implying that the mayor and Rika might have actually ordered some of those killings. She said it all without turning around with her back to us. At some point, her tone of voice had gone back to being the Mion we knew.
私は自分のしたことには信念を持ってるし、罪の意識などまるでない。あるとすれば、私の後継ぎも決まらないうちに舞台を退かねばならないことくらいかな。私を捕まえて、それで法治国家の体裁が整うなら、それも時代の流れかなって。この100年で一番平和なひなみ沢を見ながら引退できるのは、ひょっとすると歴代の園崎家の当主で一番の幸せなのかもしれないし。
I do think it's odd still that she hasn't mentioned her grandma yet. Mion leaned a shoulder against the paper door and slid down it and flopped on the ground. It was an act of such resignation that just seeing it made me hurt inside. The numerous terrible crimes Mion had been a part of suddenly began to fade from my mind. Hey, Mion. I don't care what happens after this. Can't you just try to struggle as much as you can? Try to run away? As soon as I began to think that way, Rena's ringing voice filled the room.
でも、みーちゃんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺したんだよね。
Yeah, that's the real crux of this. Like, I like this idea that it's showing Keiichi's like his heart aches. He wants her to be. He doesn't want her to hurt. He doesn't want her because he still cares. But you know, that's the real stinging part there. She killed them. The sharp points of her words stabbed into my chest despite not being directed at me.
他の人のことは殺してもいいとも言わないよ。でも、とにかくみーちゃんは。
Ironically, Ren is almost saying like, look, I could almost understand you killing other people, but why them? And she's got a real point there. Why them?
リカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺した。
Oh, Rena's words were more biting than any I had ever heard. Even now that we all knew the heavy history passed down on Mion's shoulders, she had criticized her for killing our friends. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, just because even if you have the most crappy backstory you could ever have, like the most tragic, would that justify the murder of people, specifically children? I don't think so.
私が園崎家の役目を負うように、リカちゃんだって古出家の役目を負っていた。その役目が西宮殿を守ることだった。
Yeah, nope, still, I'm sorry. My chest tightened.
去年あたりからリカちゃんが言ってたのは知ってたんだよ。西宮殿の勘抜きが重くて辛い。もっと簡単な鍵に付け替えたいって。先代の神主さんでも重いと嘆いてた代物だからね。リカちゃんに辛いのは重々承知だった。
僕がちゃんと番をしますですから、もっと軽い鍵に変えてほしいなのです。
I relied on the behalf of the Sonozaki family leader. I replied on the behalf. Ever since the string of freak death incidents, there seem to be people who are insolent toward Oyashiro-sama, so you shouldn't replace the lock with a simpler one. That said, the leader of the Kimiyoshi family, Old Man Kimiyoshi, If it's that difficult for you, Rika-chan, then I think it's okay to replace the lock, he said. The very fact that it was locked with a key was an indication of it being somewhere you mustn't enter. Therefore, there's nobody bad enough to break through it and go inside, he said. Even if we were alike as leaders, I couldn't find it in me to argue with Old Man Kimiyoshi since I owed him so much. In the end, we decided to change out the lock at the storehouse and switched it to a really cheap and light padlock. I feel like there was you could have had a middle ground, right? Like a not super light, like a lighter, but maybe not like a very cheap padlock.
おじいちゃん、本当に大丈夫なんですか？バッチャもできることなら鍵は前のままの方が良かったと言ってます。
大丈夫だよ。心配性だな。何かあったらおじいちゃんがちゃんと責任を取ってあげるから。
So, okay, that sounds like a promise.
本当ですね。君吉家の当主として責任を取られるという意味ですね。おじいちゃんもこの中に収められているものがどれだけ神聖なものかよくご存知のはず。
大丈夫なのですよ。このひなみ沢に鍵を開けて勝手に入ってしまう悪い猫さんはいませんなのです。
She's already talking with the bad cat's analogy.
にゃーにゃー。
Sobs escaped from my mouth. Something hot and wet dripped down in spades and fell to the tatami mat.
西宮殿に賊が忍び込んだという話は、渡流しの祭りの最中にもう私の耳に入っていました。賊は4人。その日のうちに手が下されることになりました。同時に、西宮殿に賊を許した古出家のリカちゃんと君吉家のおじいちゃんも責任を問わなければならなくなってしまった。
My tears dripped and dropped. Dripped and dropped. Dripped and dropped. Until just now, I decided that it was Mion's fault that she killed Rika-chan and the others. That was wrong. The one who killed them wasn't Mion. It was me.
俺が殺したも当然なんだ。
Keiichi, I get that, but the thing is, no. It wasn't you. Like, just because, like, your actions were used as an excuse, but you didn't kill them.
ケイチ君。
I had a chance to stop this tragedy from happening, and yet, I didn't. Cheap curiosity got the better of me, and I didn't. If at the time I had stopped us from sneaking into the ritual storehouse, Rika-chan and the others wouldn't have had to die. If I had, then nothing would have happened. We would be spending our days having lots of fun like we always did.
俺がバカだった。
If by shedding tears I could take it all back, then I would have filled up the room with them. However, such a meager act wouldn't be enough to redeem myself for the crime I'd committed.
ケイちゃんは何も悪くないよ。
Mion gently began to speak to me as if trying to reason with me.
私は園崎家の当主として手を下さなければならなかったけど。
Did you, though? There was no other recourse?
園崎家の歴史なんか、今にして思えば大したものじゃない。そんなもの全部投げ出しても、私は仲間を救うべきだったのかもしれない。
I almost wonder if she has a lot of pressure from behind her, over her shoulder as well. But who? Like, it almost feels like a self-imposed pressure now.
私がそんなものに屈したから、あの二人を殺してしまった。
That's the first time she's openly said it. I guess, maybe not, though.
それは他でもない。私、園崎ミオンが殺したということ。私には、踏みとどまる100億の瞬間があった。でも踏みとどまらなかった。安易に自らの役割に屈し、仲間のために戦うことを放棄してしまった。
The easy roll.
だからこれは私の罪。私が殺した。
It's almost like she knows the people are probably listening.
園崎ミオンがこの手で殺してしまった。それは何ら変わらない。
Like, she's saying that, but like I said, the way her expression is and the way she's saying it, it sounds like she's saying a confession, but is it a confession? Like, it's almost as if she wants to be heard, like she's taking the fall for somebody, but that doesn't seem right either. I don't know what's going on. Something feels off about what this is. Like, the way that the lines are being delivered, the way that this feels, it feels off. I don't know why. Her masochistic laughter was sad. Especially because Mion boasted in club that she would turn up tables on whatever predicaments presented themselves. It was so painful.
でも、みーちゃんは自分の意志で一人だけ救ったんだね。
Keiichi.
え？
As I looked at her surprised, Retta stuck her finger right at my forehead.
ケイチ君だけを殺さなかった。こんなにも強い力を持つみーちゃんなら造作もなかったろうに。でも殺さなかったんだよね。
Yeah, you desperately tried not to. That's right. Mion was so cunning that nobody could stand up to her, even in our club. If she had seriously tried to kill me, I would have been dealt with on the first night. So many people had been sacrificed, but I was always left out in the cold. When did I first realize it? Even though people were disappearing one after the other, for some reason, I had this vague belief that only I would be left alive.
さて、どうして殺さなかったのかね。鬼の私には見当もつかないわ。ミオンの方に 殺したくない都合でもあったんじゃないの？
そりゃ、どういう意味だよ。
Shh. Mion put a finger on her lips to say that Rena didn't need to talk.
大石は外で待ってんの？
うん。
逃げ場は？
ない。ぐるっと囲んでるって言ってた。無線でたくさんの車が来てるみたいだったよ。
I like how Rena would totally entertain the idea of maybe letting her run away.
みーちゃん家の広い敷地を全部囲んでると思う。
Mion fell silent. Rena's merciless words felt cruel, but they weren't meant to be. Maybe they were trying to lessen her good friend's pain, if only by a little. Maybe they were considerate, like she was trying to help.
自首しよ。
Mion didn't open her mouth, but she smiled just a little.
私たちも一緒に行くよ。親友を一人きりになんか絶対にし。
泣くことレナには勝てないわ。
She rose, scratching her head. Her face had returned entirely to that of the usual Mion.
自分で自分の罪、どのくらいになるかよくわかってる。
Man, if this is actually how it's gonna play out, this is actually really sad. Like, can you imagine having to have such a frank conversation with a person you cared about? Like, imagine like a family member too. Like not just a friend, but like imagine a family member you find out they've committed some kind of terrible crime. It's like you could try to help cover it up, but reality, you know that they'll need help. You know that they shouldn't be like that. They clearly can't control or the situation's gone well beyond like reasonable. And you have to like sit down and be like, look, I love you to pieces, but you've got to stop and you've got to go turn yourself in.
たとえ自首が認められても、多分もうここに帰ってくることもないと思う。
I couldn't say anything. The number of deaths Mion was involved in was just too large. So much so that maybe recommending that she turn herself in was in a way extremely cruel.
だから最後にわがままを聞いてほしいな。
何かな。
30分でいいから、ケイちゃんと二人きりにしてほしい。
Okay. Huh? My name suddenly came up, and it looked like I was the only one surprised about that.
ケイチくん。
Careful.
どうかな。ケイチくんが嫌なら無理にとは言えない。
This is going to be painful. She might decide to kill you, but we'll see.
そうだね。嫌ならそれでもいいよ。私は鬼だもの。ケイちゃんはよそから引っ越してきた正真正銘の人間。相入れることなんて、お社様が実在して仲介してくれない限り絶対にない。
Interesting. For us to be compatible without Oyashiro is not possible. Weird angle to take from that. So again, like, I still think that the curse is more of an excuse or maybe like a fallback for psychological distress. So that almost makes it sound like they have a tradition of basically not marrying outside the core three families. That's some very likely inbreeding type of tendencies that could happen with any royalty. There was no reason for me to hesitate. Mion had been engulfed by heavy, unstoppable tradition. The one who had forced her to kill her friends with her own hands, that was me and me alone. In fact, with me cornered, it would have been okay for her to blame me. However, Mion didn't say one word of blame. Far from it, I was guilty of the same crime, and she let me go. Amidst the fate she could not oppose, she saved me alone. I didn't know whether I should be thankful for that. Thinking upon it now, I didn't know how much easier it would be if I were to be granted the same punishment as Rika, Chan, and the others. The only thing I knew for sure was that I had an equal duty to bear the sins that Mion shouldered. So, when it came to Mion's last request, there was no reason for me to hesitate. Except for, she might decide in a frantic state to try and make sure the scales are balanced to finish the job. She might have been resisting this whole time, but maybe now that she's like, well, the game's up, might as well fulfill my final duty as a Sonozaki head.
あ、いいぜ。
ありがとう。
私からもありがとうを言うよ、ケイチ君。
Rena stood up. It looked like she would keep her promise with Mion and leave.
いいよレナ、ここで待っててくれれば。ケイちゃんとは庭をぐるりと回りたいだけだから。退屈だったら私の部屋へ行けばいい。漫画、なんだったらお気に入りの単行本丸ごと持ってってもいい。
Oh, that's so sad. Like that she's aw.
嫌だよ。みーちゃんの本はみーちゃんのものだもの。勝手にレナの家に持って帰れない。
あんたはこんな時に限っていい子なんだから。
Mion took Rena's head and rubbed it violently like she always did.
じゃあ行こう、ケイちゃん。
I began to walk after Mion, who headed for the hallway when Rena silently stopped me.
みーちゃんもよろしくね。
Alright.
あ、
みーちゃん、もう二度と帰ってこれないって確信してる。
I didn't know much about laws, but with as many deaths as she'd been involved in, the chances of her escaping a heavy punishment seemed non-existent.
みーちゃんが短期を起こさないように見張ってね。
Mion might not surrender herself to justice, but instead choose to put an end to things herself. Rena had already thought that far ahead.
あ、そんなこと絶対にさせないから。
Rena rubbed at her tears, which had fallen without me noticing them.
じゃあ言ってあげて。
I still think this is going to have a bad ending of some kind, but I nodded and followed Mion, who had disappeared out the front door. I could clearly hear Rena sobbing from the other side of the paper door. Aww.
どうしてみーちゃんは鬼なんか継がされちゃったんだろうね。それは仕方のないことだったんだろうね。でもあんまりにもかわいそうだよね。
Yeah. Something hot burned down my cheeks. They were my tears. I fiercely wiped them away. This was the last of my time I could afford to Mion, so I absolutely didn't want to let her see my tears during it. Mion was already waiting outside the front door. Alright, here we go. End game now. Sorry about that, Twisted Sisters. I put on my shoes, tapped my toes against the floor a few times, and left, and Mion timidly came over. Why is she turning all red at a time like this?
腕組んでもいいかな。
It was such a modest request.
別に構わないぞ。
Aw. With my permission, her face lit up with glee, like a child being given a toy, and took my arm.
私に腕を組まれたらなんだか緊張しちゃわない？
Mion? Yes. And I'm sure for very complicated reasons, both, like, of the shy, like, young, like, type, and also the, like, you actively murdered my friends type.
例えば急に関節技を決められちゃうんじゃないかななんて思ったりとか。
姉妹揃って同じことを言うんだな。思わないよ。全然。
Back when nothing had gone wrong yet. During those nostalgic days of bustling commotion at Angel Mort, I counted back and was amazed. It had only been 1 week ago. It had been arm in arm with Shion then too. Linking arms with Mion like this really reminded me that they were twins. How much strength they put into it, the sensation of their arms, their warmth, and their blood flowing, I could feel their living sensations were all exactly the same.
シオンもケイちゃんのことが好きだったみたい。
そうなんだ。
If this were a regular conversation, I might have jumped back, red in the face. Right now, though, no matter what I heard, my mind remained at peace.
ミオンとシオンは仲は良かったんだろ？
さあ、どうかな。ケイちゃんは自分の右手と左手は仲がいいと思う？
That's a great analogy. Do you think your right and left hand get along?
え？右手と左手？それは仲がいいとか悪いとか、そういう言い方で例えるものじゃないな。
They just are.
そういう関係だから。仲がいいとか悪いとか、そういう尺度では測れない関係。
That didn't sound like it meant that they got along really well.
例えば利き腕というものがあるように、 右手と左手には間違いなく優劣の違いがある。
Interesting. I've always actually thought that that's interesting. Like my observation has been like, so I'm right-handed like most people are. But for me, I felt like my left hand is always the stronger hand. Like it's the one that has the better grip and it's the one that's better like at like doing like physically exerting tasks. So the idea is like, in my mind at least, my right hand is really good for the delicate work, like writing and maybe like controlling like things like a computer or something. But my left hand, while it's like fine at that stuff, it really is good at like the more heavy lifting and doing things like starting an engine or something like that. And so for me, I always felt like my hands, dominant and non-dominant, were just better at different types of activities.
もしも鍋つかみが片方しかなかったら、迷うことなく利き腕にするでしょ?
And yeah, but that's because that's the part of your hand that you're going to use to pick up the heavy object.
そういう差はあったんじゃないかと思う。だからといって、左手がなくなったっていいなんて思う人は誰もいないはず。そんな、よくわからない関係だね。
多分、それは近くにいすぎるから見えなくなっているだけで、きっととても仲のいいことなんだと思う。俺は一人っ子だから、祭りの前日、ミオンとシオンが二人してじゃれ合っているのを、すごく羨ましいと思った。
ないものねだりじゃないの？双子なんて、昔は人をからかったりして、そこそこに面白かったけど、こうして互いがはっきりと異なる個性を持った今では、かえって邪魔なだけ。
That makes sense. Were they cursed or were they self-conscious? Their relationship was hard to understand for an outsider. Maybe that wasn't an issue like someone like me should intrude on. Just staying silent and nodding gently was the best way to advance the conversation. Mion passed through the wide yard and invited me to the big desolated forest we'd seen on the way in. Such a big forest was part of the property, so I couldn't help but feel small.
でかい森だな。子供の頃はいい遊び場だったんじゃないのか?
Mion seemed to be silently reminiscing. I couldn't look into her mind, but she's probably thinking back on those fun days when they played as sisters without any antagonism. Every time the wind blew, it caressed the treetops and leaves, making swishing, murmuring sound. Mion remained silent for a long time, thinking back on her younger sister, whom she'd gotten rid of with her own hands. There was no need for me to get a word in. And just walking like this, arm in arm, it was enough. Mion suddenly stopped and turned.
シオンは、まだ生きてる。
Oh.
本当か?
Mion took a hard look in my eyes and nodded quietly.
誰よりもむごたらしい死に方をさせてやろうと、ずっと考えて閉じ込めておいたけど。
Sheesh. To just so coldly admit that you wanted to give her the worst death.
今日まで、その方法はとうとう思いつかなかった。
Mion sounded as though she hated Shion, but also deep down, like she didn't completely detest her. So I took my other hand and wrestled Mion's hair with it. Mion didn't only save me. She saved Shion too. Mion may have become a demon and let many people to their deaths. But she fought against it and was able to save 2 people. As I petted Mion, she narrowed her eyes at an entranced smile and untangled her arm from mine. Then Mion quietly said,
来て。私の罪のすべてを見てほしいから。
Oh, buckle up. This is gonna be rough.
でもそれはケイちゃんにとって、この上なく辛い光景かもしれない。
Yeah. I could sense it. There I would probably find all the sacrifices up until now. Looking at them would mean accepting Rikuchan and Satoko's deaths, as well as accepting that my best friend had done it.
すでに起こり、終わってしまった事実だけれども、ケイちゃんは見ないことを選んでもいい。そうならば、ここで待っていて。
It's like, it'd be such a scarring, no matter how old you were, to witness this. It might not be worth the psychological torture and pain, but then at the same time, I almost feel like you have to. You have to. Somebody needs to witness, who isn't just the police.
私の手で、すべて終わらせるから。
I was taken aback by how ominous that sounded. I remembered what Ren had told me. Mion might not surrender herself to justice, but choose to put an end to things herself. I couldn't leave her on her own. Besides, I agreed to let her last request, didn't I? Even if it was hard for me to accept, I'll still do it. Even if I avoided looking, it was something that had already happened. Interesting perspective there. It's kind of like... No, never mind. I had a thought, but it feels very It doesn't feel associated with this, so maybe later.
何を見たって。俺にとっての園崎ミオンは最高の親友だ。
Aw. She wanted to be more than that, bro.
それは変わらない。一生。
The treetops slowly swayed in the wind.
あんたもレナも、どうしてこんな時ばかりかっこよくなるんだろうね。
Normally I'd say something rude right back at her, evading the question, but today I didn't. I just answered with a smile. At last, Mion started walking into the thick forest, into the deepest part. And following the thin path that looked like an animal trail for a while, we finally came across a steep incline with a tunnel that reminded me of a coal mine or bomb shelter. We were surrounded by shallow hills that had been created with a spot not visible from the outside. There were many silhouettes of crows in the trees here and there. The abnormal odor I'd been smelling for a while was doubtlessly escaping from inside this place.
引き返すなら今だよ。
Oh boy. Oh, brace.
ケイちゃんの中の園崎ミオンがどんな人かは知らないけれど、中に入れば、そのミオンはきっと。
Do you hear the tone shifting that's happening there? She's talking about Mion Sonozaki in like a third person now. It's like the different masks that she wears or the different personalities that are a part of her are now like speaking through.
変わらない。何度だって言う。園崎ミオンは俺の最高の親友だ。
Alright. I clenched my fists. Inside there was probably a sight beyond anything I could imagine. I felt if I let my guard down, I might end up vomiting. Even so, I'll endure it. I'll overcome this pain and this suffering. I will never change, and Mion's my greatest friend.
私はただの鬼だから、もう人間の気持ちはわからないけれど。
You know, I actually almost kind of get that. If she was like from childhood, she was desensitized to this type of thing. If she witnessed it, maybe like from childhood. She was encouraged. She was rewarded for fulfilling these requests and being a part of this. Like the whole war aspect of the dam. Like if from a young age she was told that as long as they were the bad guys, no matter how closely she knew them, that their deaths were a good thing. That for her, in her mind and heart, it would be no different than, you know, killing a chicken to prepare it for a meal. Like, it's a thing that would be sad and hard for a lot of people to experience unless you lived on a farm and, you know, did that to survive, and then you'd be like, oh, yeah, it's fine. I wonder if that's how she sees human sacrifices now.
ミオンがあんたを好きになったの。よくわかる気がする。
Aww. Just flat out saying it here.
他人事のように言うな。お前はミオンだ。鬼じゃない。血の通った人間で、俺の仲間なんだ。
Mion made a gesture like she was wiping tears away from her eyes and placed a hand on the big door to the tunnel entrance. Here we go. The lock on it was dauntingly strong looking. Probably similar to the lock that was on the temple, the storehouse. It seemed to demand an appropriate resolution from whoever would enter, just like a ritual storehouse. When the double doors opened, a stifling, rotten air and a bunch of winged insects came rushing out. I remembered accidentally killing a hermit crab a long time ago by leaving its tank out on the porch, and how intense the odor it left was. If that was the smell of a corpse, then this certainly was what this smelled like. Inside it was pitch black, but Mion flicked a switch that turned a light bulb, illuminating the interior. The path turned into a series of intricate wooden tunnels. We passed spaces that looked like they were for storage. I even said before when we got to the property, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was tunnels into the mountain. That's exactly what this is. We passed places looked like someone had lived there. All this indicated it had been used as a bomb shelter and stockpile during the war. It didn't give an impression of a dugout bomb shelter that had just been left there, though. There was a sense of dignity, as though it were a second Sonozaki house constructed underground. Despite being in pitch darkness below the ground, the voices of the cicadas were entering through an air hole somewhere, giving a very mysterious feel.
西宮殿の中、見たよね。あの拷問道具の山を。あれはすべて、鬼ヶ淵村の厳しい戒律を守るために作られたものだった。
Right.
戒律を破った者を、 見せしめにむごたらしく殺してみせる。
大昔の話だろ。
本来は見せしめの儀式。渡流しは、御三家が取り仕切る儀式だったんだけど。
Yeah, it was a deterrent. I've said that before. Like, it was always more of a political thing. Like, religion, sure, but political as well.
君吉家と古出家の衰退。そして、時代の変化によって、行うことはとても難しくなった。
そりゃそうだな。この現代日本で、犠牲者をのんびりと沢でばらして殺せるなんて思えない。
だから、園崎家は作ったの。
Interesting. So this is the alternative.
現代でも渡流しの儀が行えるように。秘密の場所を。
Mion opened a large, strikingly different door. And inside was none other than a modern storehouse for ritual implements.
いろいろあるでしょ。
Yeah, it's like the same room, but like with modern versions. That's crazy.
一部のものは実際に西宮殿から運び込まれたものなんだよ。
All the things that had been rusty and covered in dust, so they didn't seem that real. But the things here were different. Every one of them had been well maintained and kept in a state that they could be used right away. Blades gleamed and spikes were sharpened. This is a dangerous place for us to be! Also, perhaps as a precaution for the splattering of blood, their walls and ceiling were covered in a kind of tiling you would see in bathrooms, and there was even a drain set amidst the slight slope in the floor. That's horrifying. That's genuinely horrifying. There were also coiled rubber hoses along the wall attached to a faucet, perhaps for cleaning up the splattered blood.
大昔の当主の書き物によるとね、血のしぶきってのは、犠牲者に負担をかけない割にはインパクトがあるんだってさ。渡流しは見せしめの章だったから、私のご先祖様たちは、様々な章を考案してたんだよ。
Yeah. As she said that, Mion pointed deeper into the torture room in a spot veiled in darkness. There was surprisingly a room floored with tatami mats, and in the corner was a pile of cushions.
鑑賞席なんだよ。渡流しは見せしめの章だから、客がいなきゃ意味がない。
Holy crap. I couldn't speak, and I couldn't think of anything to say anyway. Except that if Mion revealing all this made her heart feel any lighter, then I was prepared to listen for as long as I needed to.
みんなここで、私が殺した。見てくれている観客はいなかったけど、私は渡流しを上手にやってみせた。
I really don't like how calmly she's saying this.
いや、観客は一人だけいたかな。
Now there's where the curse.
観客？
私という鬼が、ミオンの執り行う渡流しをずっと見てたから。
Okay. So this is like, she's speaking as if, like, the possessed, like, Oyashiro, right? Mion cackled in self-depreciation. It wasn't a nice sounding laugh.
向こうが牢屋。
シオンはそこにいるのか？
She nodded slightly. Mion's Watanagashi had ended today. I needed to tell Shion that I was safe without a moment's delay. After all, she's probably trembling in fear at this very moment, worrying about when she would be killed. The ostentatious door on the other side opened, revealing what must have been an incredibly expansive space based on the echo it made. Mion groped around the darkness, and a handful of naked light bulbs came on here and there. As my eyes adjusted more and more to the great cave showed itself the faint light. The walls were bare rock surface, and it felt so savage that bomb shelter was the most apt term for it. There were small barred rooms built here and there, like holes made by insects biting their way through the giant piece of fruit. It was immediately clear that each one of them was a prison.
みんなはどこにいるんだ？リカちゃんやサトコは。
死体？
I grimaced at her saying it so outright.
ああ、そうだ。いつまでも暗い中じゃかわいそうだろ。
虫が湧くと嫌だったから、井戸に捨てちゃったよ。
Oh my gosh.
ごめん。
So I can't even see their faces in death. Once again, my feelings of regret having confessed everything to Rika-chan came surging forth. If Mion hadn't attached the word sorry to the end of what she'd said, I might have punched her. Calm down, Keiichi, Maribara. You said it yourself, no matter what, Mion Sonozaki's your greatest friend.
ああ、言ったさ。
I needed to hear myself say it out loud. Then came a clattering of bars in one of the cells deeper in. When I noticed it, I looked up as well.
シオンか。
ケイちゃんなの。
I ran over to the cell. White hands were peeking out through the gaps in the bars. It really was her.
大丈夫かシオン、怪我はしていないのか。
Yeah, I have a feeling that this is kind of a final revenge point. Shion's face twisted out of shape as she screamed. It was because Mion had appeared right behind me. Of course. Shion didn't know that everything was over yet.
落ち着けシオン、もう全部。
I spoke in a calm voice as I could manage to try and soothe the agitated Shion. However, it didn't seem like she was getting through her screams.
シオン、ご機嫌はいかがだった？
Oh, listen to that tone change! Oh, that's so crazy! Oh, it's like a whole different person.
もう誰の死を見るのも嫌。
Oh, she made Shion watch everything, didn't she?
私が憎いなら早く私を殺してよ。憎いのは私なんでしょ。早く殺して。
落ち着けってシオン、もう終わったんだよ。大丈夫なんだ。だから落ち着け。
Shion, who was screaming and rattling the iron bars back and forth, was truly in a frantic state. I gave a slight shrug of resignation, giving way to Mion. I had realized that if Mion was the one who locked her in here, and if Mion was the one who had scared Shion this much, then Mion was also the one who could put an end to this. Mion spoke from over my shoulder, quietly.
安心しなよ。
I knew it! No!
あんたは殺さない。まだまだ殺さないんだから。
Oh no. I had a feeling. She burst into a bizarre laugh as if trying to make Shion's madness even worse. Shion broke out into a fierce shiver brought on by that laugh and rattled the iron bars as she wailed.
もうやめて！ケイちゃんを殺さないで！ケイちゃんは何の関係もないでしょ。殺すなら早く私を殺してよ。もう誰が死ぬの？
We really should have come here.
そんなに死にたければ、この男を殺した後にゆっくりとひき肉にしてやるよ。古式にのっとり、獅子の先端から少しずつガリゴリと削ってミンチにしてやる。あの肉引き器はあんたのために取っておいてやるんだからね。それともそれでケイちゃんをミンチにしてみせた方があんたには面白いかな？
Oh man, we're in trouble now.
おい、いい加減にしろ。今さら怖がらせてどうするんだよ。
I tried to rebuke Mion for flinging terrible words at her at this late in the game, but when I turned around, Mion's mouth, so much so that it was hard to believe, it twisted into a shape even thinner than a crescent moon. It was a smile. I mean, I knew we were probably gonna die, but gosh darn it, man. We really shouldn't have allowed this to happen. We should have made sure Rena was close behind us. I could sense like a jolt of electricity. The person here wasn't my best friend Mion. It wasn't the Mion Sonozaki who had been tossed about by her heavy duty of succeeding the Sonozaki family either. Then, who was she? Ba-bam. I saw sparks flying before my eyes like what happened when you get hit in the head back of the head. The strength of my body drained instantly and my head suddenly became heavy. My knees buckled under the temptation and hit the floor. Then my whole body abruptly collapsed. My face should have hit the floor, but it was comfortable, as if it had fallen down onto a down-filled futon. My consciousness reeled, then receded. It was the kind of sensation like if you took a nap in a car, but you were still half awake, could listen to your parents talking as if they were far away. No, you wouldn't be listening. You would only be hearing it. It was happening so far away, the conversation was completely unrelated to you, so you would have no interest in it. So whether Shion was yelling in my ear or Mion was in vulgar hysterics, I didn't think it annoying, nor did it interest me.
さて、どんな方法で料理してやろうかね。そうだ、釘台なんかどうかな。あのちびがき二人組に試したかったんだけど、手が小さくて高速台にサイズが合わなかったからね。あれにしよう、あれにしよう。
Mion held me up from behind and dragged me across the floor. The soles of my feet scraped on it, and one of my shoes fell off. Shion's emotions exploded outward and she burst into bitter weeping. As if her crying had whetted Mion's interest, she had flung me down and returned to the prison cell again.
あんたも可愛い声で泣けるじゃない。あんたのわざとらしい辛い針には虫唾が走ってたんだけど、やっぱりそういうあんたが一番似合ってるよ。
Sheesh.
ミオン姉さん、お願いです。私をどういう風に殺しても構いませんから、どうかケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげてください。お願いです。
Shion had always acted so tough, as though she were a cut above her older sister. That Shion, in such a miserable voice, I couldn't have imagined it during those peaceful times. Prostrated herself before the older sister she used to scoff at and pleaded forgiveness. Mion looked down with an expression of cool indifference, one that was plainly smiling with joy.
あんたの希望なんか聞くつもりは全然なかったんだけど、あんたがあまりにも面白い声で泣くものだから、なんだか聞いててやってもいいような気がしてきたかな。思えばあんたには姉らしいこと何にもしてやれなかったからね。はい、はい、ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
Dang.
じゃあさ、これまでのことを謝ってみせてよ。そうしたら私もこれまでのことをすっかり水に流してあげてもいいかな。そうしたらケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげなくもないよ。
Mion said she might let me go, but she never said anything about letting Shion go. Before long, Shion got her hands and knees behind the bars and began to speak words of apology. They were too faint for me to hear, but their intention got across. Despite having watched her with a magnificently jubilant expression, Mion kicked the bars and declared she was unsatisfied.
そんなので私の積年の恨みつらみが償えると思ってるわけ？こんなんじゃダメだね。やっぱりケイちゃんからひき肉だ。いやー！待って姉様！もう一度だけ。
Mion stopped and waved her hand again in resignation. Not because she'd grown impatient, but only because she was taking delight in abusing Shion.
ろくろく満足に謝れないあんただからね。特別にお姉が心に届く謝罪の仕方ってのを教えてあげるよ。一度しか教えないし、一言一句でも間違えたらアウト。いいね。はい、ありがとうございます。お姉さん。
Shion's miserable voice cried out, having become utterly hoarse. The sensation tearing through my chest returned a little at a time. I realized it was feelings of anger bubbling up. I was slowly regaining control of my body. However, I was only able to feel my skin and my blood flowing at the moment. I still couldn't voluntarily move my fingers.
ちゃんと覚えられたかな？ではやってごらん。誠心誠意、鉄頭鉄尾、心を込めてね。ちゃんとできたなら、あんただけを殺してあげるから。はい。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
Something was strange. Something had been strange at some point. Until just a few moments ago, I was sure this had been Mion, but at some point, she'd become someone else. Yeah, I think it was the instant you walked into the forest. That's when her speech pattern really changed. The Mion I knew well would never do something so nasty like enjoy trampling all over someone's dignity like this.
さ、やってごらん。お姉ちゃんはちゃんと聞いててあげるから。Sonozaki Shion は。
When I ran over to Shion's cell earlier, had the real thing been swapped out with a fake right behind me? Anyway, this couldn't possibly be Mion.
Sonozaki Shion は、ミオン姉様の足元にも及ばない。身の程をわきまえず、姉様に働いた数々のプレーを思います。
Fetch me.
ほらほら、その調子。少しは許してあげようかなって気になってきたよ。
Blood circulated through my whole body. My numbed senses were returning. Just a little more. While Shion was still holding Mion's... No, the thing that's pretending to be Mion's attention. Hurry up!
生意気だったこれまでを反省し一生ミオ姉様に忠誠を誓いますですから
Mion's burst of laughter echoed through the big cavern, growing at a terrifying level. That was not the laugh of someone who was alive in this world. It was none other than the laugh of a demon from the bowels of the earth. She laughed from her stomach until she grew tired of it and stopped smiling suddenly as if snapping a wire.
いいよもう十分面白かったわあんたがそこまでプライドを捨てられるとは思わなかったから十分に愉快
Mion began to drag me again after I finally got the feeling in my body back and pulled me toward the torture chamber.
姉様殺すのは私だけその人許してあげ安心しなってちゃんとあんたは殺してあげるよケイちゃんの悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせた後にね
After dragging me to the torture chamber, she skillfully strapped me into the restraining table. Before I knew it, I was sprawled out and unbound. She forced open my hands, which I couldn't even make a satisfying fist, and tightly restrained each one of my fingers. She fastened only my hands, my fingers at that, tightening the hinges with locking them in place. The door to the big cave with the jail had been left open, so I could hear Shion's cries of mortification the entire time.
聞こえるかいシオンこれから始めるよケイちゃんの若い悲鳴をたっぷりと楽しみな
いい加減にしろ。
The feeling in my body returned. The first action I took was to tell off that thing that looked like Mion.
ようやくお目覚め私さっき嘘をついたねシオンを一番むごたらしく殺してやろうと思って閉じ込めておいたけど
Oh,
まだ
yeah.
思いつかないって言ったやつあれが嘘
Mion brought over something like a toolbox. From inside it, she removed a large metal hammer, and next to that, she began lining up what looked like long, strangely shaped nails whose ends had been turned into hooks, like those you'd see in a harpoon.
あの子に自分のせいで死ぬ大勢の人の悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせて体の芯まで染み通らせてから殺すの
Dang.
なかなかセンスいいでしょ
It's gross. Like I guess at the beginning, I knew she was a good actor. I was really hoping, but I knew this was likely where it was gonna go. I'm not surprised, but horrified. Oh gosh.
お前は誰だ？
はミオンでしょ園崎ミオン恐怖で頭が変になっちゃった
違うな。お前が園崎ミオンであるはずがない。
Mion snorted and continued her preparations for a horrifying torture.
へえじゃあ私がミオンじゃなかったら
鬼だ。
え
お前はミオンじゃない。さっきまで一緒だったミオンを返せ。
ケイちゃん本当に頭は大丈夫恐怖で頭がどうかなっちゃった
触るなこの鬼め返せミオンを返せよ俺の最高の友人だったミオンを返せ
Mion stood there for a few moments with her jaw hanging open, not having expected me to say that. I myself knew I was about to go insane. I knew it was nonsense to demand Mion's return when she was right in front of me. But this person in front of me couldn't possibly have been Mion. There was no way I could accept that. So this is what I thought. Mion really had been possessed by a demon and was controlling Mion as if it were a separate personality. Mion was just a victim being manipulated by it. The evil one was really this thing. It all had to be the doing of the demon possessing her. When Mion heard that, she started to guffaw, laughing so hysterically she started to cough and almost choked.
あんたって本当におめでたい人だね園崎ミオンに殺されようとしているこの瞬間に目の前の私を否定するわけこんな面白い人が世の中にいるなんて初めて知ったわ
笑いたければ好きなだけ笑えだがお前が何を言おうと
俺はお前がミオンだなんて認めない。ミオンを返せ。退け、鬼め。
ケイちゃん、私を笑い涙で溺れ殺すつもり
No matter what, I wouldn't lose to that laughter of hers. I shouted loudly. I shouted from the bottom of my heart so the real Mion trapped inside the Mion I saw in front of me would be able to hear.
頑張れ、ミオン。こんな、鬼畜生に負けるな。本当に強い。お前の力を見せてくれ
The tears welled up and flooded down her face. Her hands were busy with the restraints, so she couldn't even wipe them. She just let them flow.
頼むよ、ミオン、ミオン。どこで、お前はこんな鬼に負けちまったんだ。お前はこんな弱いやつじゃないだろ。負けるな。戦え、戦え。
Mion, desperately enduring her laughter, pressed one of the long nails to the tip of my left pinky. In the left hand was the hammer, and its sides were a dozen more nails. I could tell she was about to do, and thought, though I wished I couldn't. Even so, I couldn't afford to be scared. That was why I shouted. Fetch me.
お腹の筋肉がよじれて痛いよ。もういい？そろそろ始めるよ。いい声を出してね。これはケイちゃんへの拷問である以上に、シオンへの拷問なんだからさ。
どうして、こんなことに、ミオン！
Then I wept. Only sobs came out. They weren't an acceptance of the torture about to be performed, however. They were tears of regret that Mion had lost to the demon. Yet a small change did occur in the Mion in front of me. Her heightened excitement was draining little by little. By the time I'd realized it, the only one in front of me had returned to being Mion.
ケイちゃん、メイドの土産なんて気の利いたものじゃないけれど、どうしても知りたがっているようだから、一つだけ教えてあげるよ。
I didn't know if this was Mion, or just a display of a momentary humanity the demon had recovered.
私の中に鬼が宿ったのは、その鬼は私を蝕み、強行に駆り立てようとした。だけれど私は、それを理性で押さえつけた。
Yeah.
鬼はそれで収まり、私はその鬼はどこかへ行ってしまったんだと思い込んでいた。でも、本当は違った。私の中から出て行ったんじゃなく、私の中で眠っていただけだったの。
I noticed that there were tears forming in her eyes.
その鬼は、ある小さなことをきっかけに、
Yeah.
また目覚めてしまった。
You gotta say it was his fault?
それは、何に原因があったと思う？
There was a sad yet reproachful light in Mion's eyes.
わかる？
I don't. I don't know what gave the demon a chance to beat Mion.
鬼の私が教えるのも変だけれど、あんたが全てを狂わせてしまった元凶。
I think it was her like emotions for him combined with like the feeling of betrayal and like the storehouse incident. The tears welling up in her eyes spilled downward all of a sudden.
あの時、あんたがもらった人形を躊躇なく私に渡していたなら、
Again though, you're just
全
trying
ては狂い出さなかったかもしれない。
you're just blaming him for something you did. The doll I got. That doll I got when I had the club meeting at the toy store that Sunday?
ケイちゃんには理解できないだろうね。理解できなくて当然。だけどね、そこからドミノ倒しみたいに、パタパタパタと、いろんなものが倒れ始めて、はじめの小さな一つを倒したあなたに自覚がないのは当然だろうけど、あなたが元凶なの。
It was when he gave the doll to Rena.
そんな、俺が。
あんたがミオンを泣かさなかったら、私は起きなくて済んだのにね。これで十分、メイドの土産は。
A mistake that I'd made on that day was what messed everything up.
そんな、嘘だろ。
自覚がないのは当然。でも、紛れもなく元凶なのはケイちゃん。あの時、あんたがさりげなく人形を私にあげていたら、多分こんなことにはならなかったと思う。
I wanted to say, like I just remembered something as I recalled that day. Brandon had told me about that, and that I had to apologize. I didn't apologize to Mion, though. It had been Shion. In other words, oh god, I hadn't said a single word of apology to Mion. Today I came to this house saying I had something to apologize for. I never said a word of apology about this. Come to think of it, when I apologized for going into the ritual storehouse, Mion looked a little bit lonely, like she was disappointed. Why didn't I realize until just now? Rena told me at the time, and now she herself, no, the demon was telling me. The only way for the dense idiot like me to be cured to die altogether? I could no longer hold back the hot tears from pouring out of me. I simply just cried and reflected indifferently on the taste of my tears and the taste of regret.
じゃあそろそろいい？この拷問はね、とてもシンプル。左手の小指の先端の節に釘を打つ。
Oh gosh, the joint. Ugh.
順に親指まで打ったらまた小指に戻って、今度は真ん中の節に釘を打つ。この調子で15本の釘で左手を打ちつける。それが終わったら次は右手。それが終わったら次は、指先ってたくさんの神経が集まってるから、
Yeah.
両手30本を打ち終える前に失神しちゃう人もいるそうだから。
Mion pressed the tip of the nail to my pinky finger. My wrists, my arms, all the joints of my fingers were strapped in so tightly it hurt and I couldn't even twitch.
他の人を拷問するときには何のためらいもなかったけど、なぜかあんたにはためらいがあるよ。
それでミオンの鬼が収まるなら。
If it'll sate the demon, then do to me what you will.
あんた、本気で言ってるの？
俺が傷つけたミオンの痛みに比べれば、こんなの大したことないんだろ。気の済むようにするといい。その代わり、2つ約束しろ。
Mion was silent. She did, however, wait for me to speak.
俺を気が済むまで痛めつけたら、シオンは許してやれ。西宮殿に忍び込んだ罪には、それで十分見合う仕打ちをしたはずだ。
あんた、この後に及んで、自分よりシオンの心配ができるわけ？
I feel like that was the wrong move, unfortunately.
もう一つは、気が済んだら、もうお前は消えろ。その体を、ミオンに返してやってくれ。それだけだ。
あんたって人には、命乞いをするとか、そういう考えは思い浮かばないの？
約束。2つじゃなくて。
Can you give me a third one then?
3つにしていいか。3つ目は、俺を殺すなにしてくれ。
最初に2つって言ったでしょ？だからもうダメ。
そいつは残念。
In such an abnormal situation, Mion and I laughed quietly together as if sharing in a stupid joke.
多分、私は約束を守らないよ。鬼だから。
その時は仕方がないさ。
I recalled tightening my hands into fists when enduring the pain at the dentist's office. Right now, though, they were opened all the way to my fingertips, so I couldn't even grip them. So instead, I tightened my toes. Oh, fetch me, man. This is going to be really rough. Alright, do it. I've prepared myself already, so do it. You waiting like this to hammer the nails isn't scarier. It's going to diminish my readiness after all. Mion put down the hammer and gently stroked my cheek.
ケイちゃん、今の3つ目の願いだけは
No.
聞いてもいいよ。
My third wish. To save me. She'll agree to it?
1つ目の願い、シオンを救うこと。これはもう無理。シオンは鬼が殺してしまう。それはもう決められたことだから止められない。
So this is real Mion. Oh, fetch.
だから諦めて。
Her delicate finger slid from my cheek to my chin.
そして2つ目の願い。この体をミオンに返すこと。これももう無理。今日を境に、ミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。今日以降、 もし私の姿があったとしても、それは姿だけ、私の姿をした。
そんなことはない。ミオンは、ミオンだ。もう戻ってこないなんて、悲しいことを言うな。
聞こえる？あの音。
Mion gently closed her eyes and listened. I definitely heard it as well. Slam. Slam. It was a dull noise that repeated at fixed intervals. A low noise accompanied by vibrations. A lot of people were ramming the iron doors of this underground ritual storehouse. Okay.
帰りが遅いから、レナが大石を呼んだんでしょ。あのぼやーっとした感じの子が、こんなに頭が回るのだけは計算外だったな。
Yeah.
それについては同感だよ。
Mion grinned like she'd been outwitted, then took something that looked like an electric razor out of her pocket. When she pressed the switch, pale blue sparks flew out with a snapping noise.
見たことないでしょ？本物のスタンガンだよ。
Taser.
違法品なんで、かなり出力が上げられるようになってるけどね。
Oh, fetch.
さっき、俺に食らわせたのはそれか。子供のおもちゃには向かねえぞ。
そうだね。
She seemed to want to use the stun gun on me. Unable to move, I felt her press the cold lump of metal to my neck. Slam! I heard the roar as though they'd broken down the first large door. The halls were a bit complex, but aside from the door of this very torture chamber, there was nothing in their way.
殺さないけど、しばらくケイちゃんにはお休みしててもらうね。すぐに大石が来てくれるから、ちょっとの我慢。
Feeling the same shock as before. Gritting my teeth wasn't going to help much, but I clenched them tightly anyway. However, just as she did when she was about to hammer the nails in, she hesitated a little. I cracked open my tightly closed eyelids.
ごめんね、ミオンを怪我して。
ここに入る前に約束した。何があっても、俺の中のミオンは変わらない。
でも忘れて、今日以降、もしも私を見かけても、それは、私の屍に取り付いた。
This is way sad. This is way sadder than I thought it was going to be. What are you talking about? Just as I tried to say that, a much stronger light than before shined, and the television being switched off, my consciousness went black. Twisted Sister learned the truth. June 1983. A string of disappearances occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shishibon City, X-Prefecture. The suspect is Mion Sonozaki, X years old. Think about that. In her teens. She's suspected to have kidnapped 5 Hinamizawa residents between June 19th and June 21st. Oryo Sonozaki, Shion Sonozaki. Oh, yeah, so her grandma. She did take her. Oryo Sonozaki, Shion Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, Sotoko Hojo, imprisoned them and killed them. Preliminary investigations of the incident were delayed at the time due to insufficient evidence, but it was resolved coincidentally and shockingly. On the morning of the 23rd, a vehicle patrolling the Sonozaki property heard screams from inside and rushed in as an emergency measure. They secured the suspect's missing younger sister, Shion Sonozaki, and her 2 missing classmates, Keiichi Maribara and Rena Ryugu. So Shion was rescued. The suspect fled the scene. Deep in the detached basement of the Sonozaki property, which is believed to have been used to kill those who had disappeared, we discovered hairs, flakes of skin, blood, and etc. from other 4 missing persons: Oryo Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Sotoko Hyoyo. We concluded that the missing persons were tortured in the torture chamber. However, their remains have still not been found. At one of her imprisoned classmates' advice, we continued searching the detached basement of the Sonozaki property, which is where they were imprisoned, believing they were there. However, we still have not located them or the suspect's escape route. In addition, investigations are continuing as to her participation in a serial freak death incidents of recent years, thinking it would give some clue. But no evidence that Mion Sonozaki was involved, either directly or indirectly, has been found. There are still many unclear points as to the motive behind the incident, and as those of the Sonozaki family and the residents of Hinamizawa have been extremely uncooperative in assisting us, we expect to require a long time to clarify them. The opinion of the local officer knowledgeable about the region is that there may have been a lynching, an internal form of punishment, sacrilegious acts carried out against the beliefs of the Hinamizawa village. It's clear that these incidents are particularly rooted in the region, and Prefectural Police Department has organized a cautious investigation. We anticipate gaining valuable clues from the missing persons believed to have been imprisoned for the longest time, Shion Sonozaki, the suspect's younger sister. But her mind was stricken by the grave after effects of the incident, and she has not been in a state of mind to properly answer any questions about what she knows. The psychiatrist concluded that she is in a temporary state of shock, but it doesn't seem hopeful that she will recover today either. And I worry she'll be eliminated by someone else in the family. Only a few days had passed since that time. After that, I was rescued by Oishi-san and his subordinates, whom Rena had called in. Aside from my entirely blank state of mind, I had no external injuries. The most I had was the silent burn mark from where the stun gun hit me. As I was having a checkup at the hospital, Oishi-san asked me all sorts of things. But I don't really remember what he asked or how I answered him. From what I heard, surprisingly, Mion had still hadn't been captured. There were apparently a great many hallways and smaller rooms extending out from the depths of the prison. It wouldn't be strange if she had fled out one of these and hidden herself. The one fortunate aspect amidst all the misfortune was that Shion had been safely secured by police. When I last saw Mion, it seemed like she was going to take me with her and then kill me. She probably didn't have enough time to, though, since Oishi-san came running in faster than she predicted. That was the only real fortunate thing to have happened. Of course, the rescued Shion, despite having no external wounds, now had a big, deep wound in her heart. Understatement of the freaking century. She was in a severe state of confusion when they rescued her, and apparently she bit the police officers trying to resist. From what he heard, she was seeing Mion in everyone she saw. Hated not only the hospital, but even her own home, and had shut herself up somewhere in Shushubone, hiding her location. Additionally, in fear that Mion would come for her, she was moving from place to place every day, and even her parents weren't sure where she actually was. Wherever she was living, even now, Shion was spending her days in fear of Mion's shadow. That sucks. The police were investigating the Sonozaki's underground storehouse at the moment. Since they couldn't find the remains of the other sacrifices, hadn't Mion thrown the corpses in a well? I had a feeling I'd said that to him. That meant a hidden tunnel, vertical like a well, was somewhere in those underground passages. The secret underground, with any maps or architectural drawings, which had swallowed up the remains of Rika-chan, Satoko, and everyone else, was still unwilling to speak the truth. I was brought back to the basement again, too, for an on-site inspection or something, but that didn't remember being of any help. I never wanted to go back there again. For days afterward, the Sonozakis living in Okinomiya, in other words, Mion and Shion's parents, the big-name Yakuza, would come to our house to apologize, bringing many of their followers with them. That feels more intimidating than anything, honestly. However much my parents refused it, they piled up many 100,000 yen bills, calling it consolation money every day. The amount of money grew each day, and after it had passed 2 million yen, they were then given an envelope containing a letter, probably telling them, "You need to leave." I don't know what was written in the letter. My parents talked about it by themselves for 2 whole nights, and decided to move away. Yep. They gave them the reconciliation money, and then they were told, like, if you stay, you will die, basically. So they're like, all right, we're going to go. Aww.
そっか、引っ越しちゃうんだね。いつ？
来月の終わり。Hinamizawaには結局、半年も居つかなかったことになるな。
寂しくなるね。私一人しか残らない。
Oh, that's really sad. Miranda smiled sadly. If I had just said yeah, I thought it would make her even more lonely, so I changed the subject.
こう考えることがあるんだ。
That's how I broached it. Mion hadn't actually fled, but had been demoned away in the truest sense of the term. Where she went after she disappeared, that we didn't know. What was there where she had disappeared to? I hoped there was a hobby shop dealing in imports, the kind Mion liked. In that place, she would definitely be free of the burdensome fetters of her family, and live not as Mion Sonozaki, but as just Mion, and enjoy herself. Maybe she's already met up with Satoko and Rika-chan. They must also have been waiting for the day Ren and I would join them, spending all their time doing club activities, as lively as they always were. When I told Rena that, she smiled and nodded to me. I think you're a little loopy here, boy. The incidents in the Sonozaki family have been trying so hard to hide, too, were exposed to the magazines from the single tiny seam. The serial incidents of recent years were all pulled up like a long vine in the ground one by one. For many days, news of it was brought up on the talk of variety shows. The shows, which were comedic and silly, never once tried to touch upon the grim, heavy history that Mion had been bearing. It made me mad to see them bringing up stuff in jest, but then there was nothing I could do about it now. How big an impression would these short few weeks I spent in Hinamizawa have on my life? During these few weeks, I met my best friends and had the best experiences of my life. I would probably never forget it for as long as I lived. As for a distorted image of Mion and the media created, after the masses got tired of treating her like a plaything, they would ball her up, throw her in the trash, and then she would fade from their memories. As one of the few people who knew the real Mion, I must always make sure I remember her. Beyond any doubt, that will surely become my offering to her. The sky reached up so far, and towering cumulonimbus clouds floated through it. The real summer was just before our eyes. Dang. If that's really the end, that's a way more positive one. Oh, okay. Even now, whenever 10 p.m. came around, I would expect a phone call from Shion, or Mion, rather. Now that everything was over, of course, she would never call me. But it was precisely because she wouldn't call me that I was scared of who would call me this time. Plus, Mion still hadn't been caught. I couldn't say for sure that everything was completely over. On the other side of the fear, though, were my prayers that Mion was safe. When I thought like that, I was able to sleep, even with such terrifying thoughts. Yeah, is she gonna come finish the job? The lights were off. Before her attacking when the lights were off was something that scared me. However, that feeling changed to regret within 2 days. The moonlight flittering through the gaps of the curtain shone on the desk and illuminated a doll. That's right, the doll that I should have given to Mion that day. She said it was an import from England or something. It was all the rage, didn't she? From what Shion said, the most popular among them was the one wearing the fluffy dress. After being released from the incident, the first place I went was the toy store. Everything was apparently sold out because of the things besides the things on the storefront displays. I was refused once when they said they wouldn't sell the display products, but when they realized I was Survivor A from that incident, they immediately consented. Of course, even if I bought it, I might never have the chance to give it to her again. Even knowing that, I waited for the opportunity to give it to her. I waited like this for the opportunity, with it on my desk, so I could give it to her any time. Okay. Plonk. There was a weird noise. It was a noise I wasn't used to hearing. It was too big to be raindrops, and it's completely different from the sound lost bugs make when they ram into fluorescent lights. I figured it must have misheard and nestled back into my futon. Plonk. The noise happened again. Wasn't hearing things. I definitely heard it. Where was it coming from? I got up and turned on the light. If there was a second, there would be a third. From where, though? I listened carefully. Plonk. The window. Some sort of pebbles were colliding with my window. When I realized they weren't being thrown there by the wind, but rather thrown by a person, I gave a start. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. Who would it be at a time like this? I quietly peeked out through the gap of the curtains. At the light of the gate, despite it being so late, I saw someone. They picked up a piece of gravel and threw it at this window. It hit the window and made a plonking noise. Who was it?
Oh.
I caught my breath in surprise. If my eyes didn't deceive me, that person was Mion. I threw open the window and looked at the figure again. My eyes certainly weren't deceiving me. Careful, boy, that might be the demon, she said. It was Mion. It was Mion. She was alive. Mion pressed her index finger to her lips and made a shh motion so I wouldn't shout. If she hadn't, well, I was nearly about to cry out. Mion was in a very delicate position right now. Even if it was the middle of the night, I shouldn't call out her name. I waved her, gesturing that I'd be right over, fluttering my coat atop my pajamas, and flew out the door. Did you bring the doll? I quickly hit the brakes just before going down the stairs. Although happiness was sprouting within me, I had a sad feeling that this would be our final parting. So I went back to my room again and grabbed the doll. If there was a God, I don't think I would have ever thanked him as much as today. Even if it would be the last time we ever saw each other. I was so grateful for this one chance to give it to her. She warned you, bro. She warned you. Don't, like, if you see me, don't approach me. I slid into my sandals, unlocked the door, unhooked the chain, and leapt out of the house.
ミオン
お久しぶり。どう元気にしてた
It was like how we used to meet every morning. Mion waved to me in response like she always did. It was doubtlessly Mion. It was the real Mion.
お前、こんなところをうろついてて、大丈夫なのか？
本当はいけないよ。
She certainly wasn't acting like she knew the police were following her. It was almost like she was a patient who'd gotten tired of staying in the hospital and snuck out. Her speech was relaxed enough to make me think that, and I couldn't help but be surprised. That relaxation, I thought, was more like Mion, and I was happy for it.
それより、どうしたんだよ、こんな時間に。
最後にお話ししたかったから。
That was when I noticed them. On Mion's forehead were big droplets of sweat. Her expression, too, which I had thought to be a satisfied smile, was upon closer inspection trembling slightly, and I realized she was forcing it.
私ね、
Uh-oh.
もうここにはいられない。
Oh no! I pained note I was beginning to enter her words as well, as if just smiling was a feat for her.
大丈夫か？どこか具合でも。
今日まで頑張ってきたけど。
Oh gosh.
自分でもわかるの。もうダメ。もう限界。私のお迎えはもうすぐ後ろまで来てる。
Mion's smile crumbled and she started to stiffen. Did she push herself this much to come all this way for me? Her laughter cut off, changing to rough breathing. I reached out and rubbed her back, but she knocked me away.
大丈夫かよ。もう無理するな。そうだ。俺、ミオンに。
To give to you, Mion. This all. I just wanted to do one last thing, because I knew how little time you had left. But this last thing, it... Yeah. My stomach is burning. Mion took a meat cleaver-like knife and stabbed me, and pushed it tight and twisted it. Mion? Hey, what? It hurts. She tried to warn you, bro. I cowered on the ground. My stomach was so hot it was almost spewing fire. Mion watched it, then took a few steps back and cackled. So she caught it to Shion too. The last words Mion left me with that day came back to me.
今日を境にミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。
From today on, even if my body is here, a body is all it will be. By then, the demon will have taken it over. The demon. The demon. The demon. This can't... I thought we had finally been able to meet. This can't... Mion. In a pool of blood, my own design, is the doll I bought from Mion, died in red. So red. Mion. The good fortune of having been allowed to meet Mion once more, and the misfortune of that meeting being torn apart before my eyes. Should I be grateful or curse it? My emotions were neither of those, and my consciousness sunk deep into a black swamp. The doll I bought from Mion, the blood, had ruined it. No matter how I scrubbed and scrubbed, it had needlessly been ruined. Ruined. The sad moon was so white, it looked frozen. June 28, 1983. A violent incident occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shibuya City, XX Prefecture. The victim was Keiichi Maribara, also victim of the previous string of disappearances. At around 2 a.m., he was stabbed in the stomach with a bladed object by the suspect of the last case, Mion Sonozaki, and was gravely wounded. He was discovered when his parents woke up and was transported to the clinic. He escaped death. The criminal fled the scene. Dang, I'm surprised that he survived. On the same day, the approximate same time, a fall accident occurred in Kamikshiki apartment complex in Shishibon City, XX Prefecture. The victim was Shion Sonozaki, also victim of the previous string of disappearances. Late on the same night, neighbors overheard her having a big fight with someone and informed the manager. The manager used a master key to enter the room and discovered the victim had fallen to her 8th floor from her 8th floor balcony to her death. The room had been torn apart and appeared to show traces of a fight. One neighbor has frequently visited the Sonozaki house for a long time and testified he heard what sounded like two sisters having a fight, trading insults back and forth. We believe this was related to the injury case that occurred the same day at Hinamizawa village, perpetuated by said incident suspect, and did a thorough search of the room, but could find no trace of that would imply that anyone but the victim was present. The victim fell straight down into the foliage of the parking strip. Her neck broke and she died immediately. Damn, that sucks. Her clothing were disheveled and had markings that would imply a scuffle. We also believe, however, that it could have been an insanity-induced suicide attempt based on a particular mental state of the victim after the incident. We are conducting a thorough examination on both fronts, suicide and homicide. Sadly, that the suicide angle is actually more possible than you think, because she could have technically been having both sides of the conversation herself, and it would be odd for Mion to have been able to get to both places in one night, but she did imply that she had. So... God.
本当に5分だけですからね。刺激しないようにしてください。心得ていますよ。
Clack. The door opened, and as I expected, Oishi-san came in.
どうも前原さん。ご無沙汰しておりますね。その後、お加減はいかがですか？
Oh, you know, just stabbed.
医者が言うには術後の回復は順調だそうですが、あんたの顔を見たら、また傷が悪くなりそうです。
こりゃ手厳しい。
As Oishi-san gave a laugh that smelled of sweat, he handed Mom a bag of assorted candies he must have purchased from the souvenir corner on the first floor of the hospital.
すみません、お母さん。ほんのしばらく、圭一君とお話しする時間をいただいてもよろしいですか？
Mom clearly wasn't pleased at the thought of a police officer talking to her son without her there. However, I insisted.
母さん、悪いけど、ほんのちょっとだけ、5分でいいから。
Though, grudgingly, Mom left the room. When she closed the door, Oishi-san grinned widely and looked around the room.
個室なんていい身分ですね。うちのばあさまなんかいっつも相部屋ですよ。そりゃもう賑やかなことで、ああいうところじゃ病気の重さが一つのステータスになるらしいんですよ。より重病な患者ほど偉いというか、威張っているというか。
Okay.
大石さん、5分ですよ。できれば、これが本当に最後の5分にしてほしいものです。
We have 5 minutes. I want these to be the last.
俺はもうHinamizawaとは関係ないし、ここももうHinamizawaじゃない。
沖宮には総合病院はありませんからね。椅子よろしいですかな。ゆっくらしゅっと。
There was a large university hospital in Shishibon City. It was splendidly urban, entirely different from the likes of Hinamizawa and Okonomiya. It was hard to believe Hinamizawa was part of the same city.
転院はいつ頃になりそうですか？
さあ、俺的にはいつでも OK なんですけどね。
Our moving plans were delayed a little because of my serious injury. My parents had already left the house in Hinamizawa though, and they were living in a new one. They planned to have me transfer hospitals to be closer to the new house once I'd recovered enough to be taken there.
転院先にまで来ないでくださいよ。本当に具合が悪くなりますからね。
いや、すっかり嫌われちゃいました。仕事柄とはいえ心苦しいですよ。なので、今日はこれまでの罪滅ぼしに素敵なお土産をいろいろお持ちしました。
Oh, yeah, because sweets will make up for this.
別にクッキーの詰め合わせなんか持ってこなくても。
それがね、実は中身はクッキーじゃないんですよ。ほら。
Oishi-san pulled open the can of cookies and... Whoa! Ow! I'm stretching my scar.
前原さんの好みがわからなかったので、ほら、よりどりみどり、野原は黄緑ってなもんです。さあさ、 好きなだけ持って行っちゃ
Oh
っ
my
てください。
gosh. Fetch me, man. He's like bringing him like basically like hentai.
こんな本なんか持ってこないでください。持って帰って持って帰って。いってててててて。
健全な若者がこんなところにずーっと閉じ込められてたら、こんなところにいると看護師フェチにしかなりませんよ。
Calm down, dude.
世の中には看護師さん以外にも素晴らしいものがいっぱいあるんですからね。今から専門を決めないで幅広くオールラウンドに行かなくっちゃ。
This dude is something else, man. Microphone's tilting. Like, it's like acting like it's gonna fall over. I'm sorry. I gave Oishi-san's vulgar laughter a pained grin. Somehow or other, I understood. The fact that Oishi-san was bringing it up like this meant that he must have had something important to talk about.
シオンさんの件は本当にお気の毒でした。
The night I was stabbed by Mion, Shion fell from our balcony and died. They said the police were investigating all possibilities, accident, suicide, homicide, but it could only have been Mion's doing. Mion found out where Shion was hiding and pushed her down to her death. Nothing else was conceivable.
事故のわけない。ミオンです。絶対に。
鑑識の連中は自殺だとしか思えないなんて言ってるんですが、シオンさんを突き落とし、さらにあなたを刺した。一晩のうちにね。
Yeah, that's the weird part.
ミオンはまだ見つからないんですか？
そうそう。それを今日はお伝えしたくて来たんですよ。はい。実は、見つかったんです。
Alright.
あ、いっててててて。
Learning that felt rather strange to me. Was I partly relieved that the incident was truly over, or was partly sorry my best friend had finally been caught? Felt many other things too. My heart was a maze of emotions.
それだけじゃない。園崎家の例の地下、隠し井戸も見つかったんですよ。前原さんがおっしゃられてた通り、失踪者全員の遺体をその底で発見しました。
Oh, that's a relief.
そうですか。
That sliver of hope, that possibility I'd believed in that Rika-chan and Satoko were alive just to the fact that their remains hadn't been found, gone.
あの地下に実に巧妙に隠されてましてね。いやいや、まさに死角中の死角でした。井戸状に掘られた垂直トンネルでして、はしごが設けてあって、下へずーっと行ったところに、今度は横へ抜けるトンネルが作られていました。
Dang, can you imagine having to drag, like it sounds like harsh, but think about having to drag a corpse, which is way heavier than like most people would think, all the way down there? That's crazy.
そこを数百メートルも張って進むと、なんと山中の古井戸に抜けられましたね。
過去の園崎家の当主が作らせた秘密の逃げ道だったんでしょうね。
Or it sounds more like if it had a well, it sounds more like they were preparing for a siege or maybe having to like hide out. Like again, the bunker for a bomb shelter or even like, oh, maybe like a bug out room if they got caught.
でしょうな。明治以降に作ったものでしょうが、いやいや、よくもあんなものを作ったもんです。
みんなの遺体はその底に？
はい。逃げ道の通路よりもさらに下に、コールタール状の泥水が溜まってまして、
Coal tar?
そこに無造作に投げ込まれていました。
Oh man.
相当の高さから落としたわけですから、遺体はどっぷりと埋まってしまってましてね。遺体の引き上げにはだいぶ苦労させられました。
全員見つかりましたか？
I hoped that at least they wouldn't find Rika-chan or Satoko. That's what I wished for when I asked, but my shallow hope was crushed in the blink of an eye.
はい、全員。それどころか、死後10年以上経過したと思われる人骨も見つかりました。最低でも3人分はあると思われます。Hinamizawaの歴史の暗部というわけでしょうな。
Understatement.
泥を全部吸い出したら、一体何人分の骨が出てくるやら。怖い話です。
Yeah. That weight had been pushing down on Mion's shoulders the whole time. Mion.
今、獅子骨市内の過去数十年の失踪者を洗い直しているところです。諦められてた失踪事件も、これを機に全部解決するんじゃないか。
After a deep silence, he breathed a heavy sigh. Oishi-san went for a cigarette to pass the time, but realized this was a non-smoking area, so he gave up and put it back in his shirt pocket. Good.
そうそう。これは寄り道なんですが、古出里香さん、ご存知ですよね。
もちろん、仲間ですから。
彼女、例えば糖尿病でインスリンの注射を常用していたとか。
Huh.
そんな話はありました？
What? Yeah, what? Rika-chan has diabetes? I didn't know what he was talking about.
実は、彼女のスカートのポッケからですね。
Oh, it's gonna be that serum.
注射器が見つかりまして、破損していたので薬物は特定できなかったのですが、
Oh.
少々不似合いだったので興味を持ちまして、本当にご存知ありません？
I didn't know anything about Rika-chan carrying syringes around with her.
園崎家は本業の方、薬剤屋さんのことです。で、覚醒剤を扱ってるとの噂がありましてね。
Yeah, that must be the madness drug.
その可能性もあるかなんて思ってたのですが。
リカちゃんが、覚醒剤の常用者だっていうのか？
いえ、そうは申してませんよ。ただ、お醤油をもらいに行くついでに注射器を持っていくってのは。
I wonder if she expected
どう
trouble.
考えても変ですからね。
Maybe she thought she was going to put the move on Mion first. Oh, maybe that was how she was going to protect us. She was going to turn it against Mion and take her out. But Mion moved on too quickly. I have no idea what any of this means. My eyes are spinning. I feel sick.
大丈夫ですか？看護師さんを呼びましょうか？
大丈夫ですから、話の続きを。
まあ、注射器の話はそれだけです。それだけが個人的に気になったもので。
Rika-chan.
リカさん、村のマスコットみたいなところがありましたからね。今、村は騒然としてるみたいですよ。
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
盲信してた年寄り方と、殺してしまった園崎家とで、実効支配していた御三家もほぼ全滅状態。
Yeah, this would do it.
こんなタイミングでまたダムの話が出てきたりしたら、今度こそ間違いなく敗損でしょうな。
Why do you say that like that's the plan?
もう俺、Hinamizawaとは関係ありませんから。
Actually, I was. I just said it because I thought about Hinamizawa being abandoned was unpleasant, and I wanted to end the conversation quickly. There was a knock at the door. It opened slightly, and my mom asked if we were still talking.
ありゃ、無駄話が過ぎましたか。参ったな。
I looked at the clock. 5 minutes were long past. He told my mother that there was something he really wanted to ask and if she could wait a little bit longer.
そう？手短にね。
There wasn't anything getting around the fact that she was thinking about what a police officer could be asking her son about.
日を改めた方が良さそうですね。
大石さん、ミオンは今、どうしてるんです？
I wanted to want to hear the answer and then get rid of him.
それを話す前に、本当に正直に答えてもらいたいことがあります。
Alright.
何ですか？
本当に真面目に答えてくだ
Oh,
さい。
he's got his game face on.
これ、いい加減なこと言っちゃうと、場合によっては、
Go fetch.
捜査撹乱と見られて、
Whoa, what's with this?
告発される場合もありますからね。
Okay. Oishi-san kept threatening me until the end. What the hell did he want?
前原さん、シオンさんを突き落とした犯人は誰だと思います？
ミオンしか考えられないじゃないですか。
では、あなたを刺したの誰です？
何度も言わせないでください。ミオンですよ。園崎ミオン。
Oishi-san smiled bitterly and then dabbed at his forehead with his handkerchief to wipe away his sweat. He should have expected that answer, and yet it looks as though he wasn't satisfied with it.
シオンを突き落として、俺を刺して。
See, he hasn't put it together that the fact is that those two events happened probably almost at the exact same time. There's no way she could be in both places.
ミオンの犯行だって、さっき大石さんも認めたじゃないですか。
シオン殺しの犯人がミオンだという根拠は、隣人の男の証言によるものなんです。この隣人ってのは、実は暴力団組員、つまりシオンさんのボディーガードだったんですよ。
Huh.
このうちのリーダー格が古参で、 園崎姉妹が幼いうちから親身になってた男なんだそうで。
That man said this. The noise he heard from next door was just like the sound of a fight between the sisters he was used to hearing when they still lived together. And no, there was no doubt about it. He said he heard Mion and Shion insulting each other and heard them struggling. At first, he thought it was a hallucination she was having brought on by her dementia. You see, he thought that because that sort of ruckus had been occurring every night. However, that night had been longer than the rest, and he claimed that he went to her room to give her a sedative. The noise died down when he got the manager to give him a key. He'd already decided he'd at least check up on her, and after she wasn't answering his calls, he took the plunge and unlocked the door, then saw that the room was a mess. Since Shion had been pushed over the balcony, they decided they had to be Mion. And that's how it happened.
つまり、壁越しに聞いたというだけなんです。しかもこのマンション、組の関係で住人がほとんどいないんです。ですから、この騒ぎを聞いてたのも彼らだけ。
So they were under the employ of the Sonozaki family. The Sonozaki family might have had her eliminated.
重ねて言えば、園崎ミオンを目撃した者は誰一人いないんです。
見なくったって、そんなの、ミオンの犯行だってわかるじゃないですか。
まあまあ、だから、つまりですね、あなただけが、あの晩、確かに園崎ミオンを目撃した、もう一人の目撃者のシオンさんは生きておられませんからね。
大石さんが何を言いたいのか、
At that
よ
point,
くわからないんですけど。
I clicked early. I'm excited. At this point, Oishi-san paused. The fact that this was no smoking area completely slipped his mind. He took out his pack of cigarettes again. Kerchak! He lit one with his lighter, and exhaled a long string of tobacco smoke.
あなた、本当に園崎ミオンに刺されたんですか？
Wait, is he trying to say that Shion swapped places?
はい、間違いなく。
The smoke Oishi-san breathed out floated away like a thundercloud swept away by the wind.
大石さん、ここ禁煙です。
What if that was like the ultimate twist? What if the whole time it was Mion in the cage and Shion was the one that did all the crazy stuff? That she'd swapped and had lost her mind. I feel like that'd be way too much. But the thing is, I can't trust anything!
看護師さんに怒られますよ。
実は、園崎ミオンも、井戸の底から見つかったんですよ。
What?
転落死です。あの井戸の隠し通路から逃げ出そうとしてはしごを降りる途中に足を踏み外し。
So she died that day.
そこまで転落し、首の骨を折って死亡したとみられます。はい。シオンさんと同じにね、首の骨を折って。
What? What? How's that?
あの日、前原さんを気絶させた後、足を踏み外して死んだのです。まるで、そこに突き落とした他の犠牲者の死体に呼び寄せられるようにね。
それじゃあ、おかしいじゃないですか。
No.
検視の結果、間違いなく、あの日に死亡したものと確認されました。
So then maybe that was Shion, dressed as Mion, possessed by Mion, and then she went back to her apartment and ended herself?
あなたとシオンさんを襲ってからあそこに戻ったんじゃない。あの日に、すでに死んでいたんです。
My jaw was on the floor. Mine too! There's absolutely no way that could be. Mion was the only one that stabbed me. It had to have been her. There wouldn't have been anyone else to do it.
じゃあ、誰が俺とシオンを襲ったんですか？
It seems like it was Shion.
誰が？
What the fetch?
あなたを襲った、園崎ミオンなのに園崎ミオンじゃない。
My mind had
何者かですよ。
had been a complete mess. I was starting to lose my ability to think straight.
高野美代さんの死、覚えてますか？
高野さん？はい、確か、遠くの山の中で、焼け死んだって聞いたような。
Fetch me.
あれは考察された後に焼かれたことが分かってます。検視したのは岐阜県警さんなんですけどね。 これがちょっとおかしいんですよ。初期の検視結果では死後24時間経過って出ちゃったんです。辻褄が合わないってことで大慌てで当日死亡って改ざんしたらしいんですが。
Yeah, like that implies that she died the day before Watanagashi? Despite me being an absolute wreck over what was going on with Mion, he was telling me that there was even more on top of that? I didn't understand the complex things Oishi-san was telling me.
この死後24時間って検視結果、うちかなり信頼できるものらしいんです。つまりどういうことか。これは何度も聞いた質問になりますが、あなた綿流しの晩、高野美代さんに会ってますよね。
会ってます。
その前日、お祭りの準備の日にも会ってますよね。
Yeah.
私もその時お会いしてますし。
ええ、会ってますよ。
死後24時間ってことは、
Yeah.
お祭りの前日の晩には、
How the fetch does that
もう死んで
work?
るってことになるんですよ。
What?
そんなはず。
お祭りの準備の時には生きていた。でも、あなたたちと一緒に西宮殿に忍び込んだ時、
The original,
高野さんはもうお亡くなりになっていたのです。
so she's already dead. The origin of all that happened. The beginning of everything. Our intrusion into the storehouse, which I had come to regret countless times. The one who tempted me. Takada-san. When she invited us into the storehouse, she was already no longer of this world. What the fetch?
今回の事件、死人が歩き回りすぎなんですよ。
Yeah! What the fetch is happening? An incident caused by a dead person and ended by a dead person.
園崎美音の死亡時間を事件当日ではなく、あなたを刺した直後に改ざんせよとの圧力も来てるみたい
They're
で
under
す。
pressure. So the Sonozaki family is trying to cover something else up.
この事件をとっとと終わらせようとする外圧でしょうね。ですので、今の話はどうか他言無用に願いますよ。
What the fetch? Oishi-san grabbed his jacket, was hanging by the chair, had put out a cigarette with the bottom of his foot, and started pretending to wave away the smoke floating around.
長居しました。あなたにとっての事件をせめて終わらせてあげようと思って来たつもりだったんですがね。かえって煙に巻いちゃったようで。
Absent-mindedly, he walked toward the door, looking at me, unable to speak out of the corner of his eye.
もしも今後話したいことができたらいつでもお電話ください。さっきのお土産の中に私の名刺が入ってますんで、その時はまた素敵なお土産を持ってお見舞いに来ますよ。
What the fetch? This makes no sense. Oishi-san seemed to think I was still hiding something. That I, after all this, would be hiding something? I'm the one things are being hidden from. I'm the one who wants to know.
では、またいつかお会いしましょう。お大事に。
Slam. I listened to the tap 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 of Oishi-san walking down the hallway. I still couldn't return to my state of from my state of bewilderment. Interesting. Why this angle? He wanted to end the incident as it applied to me. What was over? Nothing was over. The incident was still continuing. Did he kill us? Oh, fetch! What the fetch is that? Then slip, an arm covered in fresh blood came from underneath the bed. I wasn't that surprised. This was an illusion I was seeing, seized with fear.
ケイちゃん。だから言ったでしょ
I heard it, a guttural voice coming from under the bed. I still recognized it as Mion's voice.
なんだ、ミオン。何を言ったって？
私、あの日に警告したよ。今日以降、私の姿を見たとしても、それは私の屍に取り付いた。
そうだな。言ってたよな。
Oh boy.
ごめん。ちょっと注意が足らなかったな。だから刺されちゃったんだな。
Possibly wounds sustained when she fell from the ladder. Many of her fingernails were broken and torn. Her arm slowly felt about the top of the bed, searching for mine.
あのさ、ミオン。俺今、こんな冗談を考えたんだ。聞いてくれるか？
The Mion under the bed didn't answer.
例えばさ、俺が今日、ここで死んじゃうんだよ。だけども、明日以降もここにいて、普通に生活してみせるんだよ。で、後で、それが大石のやつに分かって、またしても死亡日時が合わない。死んだはずの人間が生活していたって言って、泡を食って大騒ぎするんだよ。
I don't like where this is going.
高野さんにミオン。そして俺で3人目。な？面白いだろ？笑えるだろ？
Oh gosh.
ケイちゃん。
笑えよ。それとも、あんまり面白くなかったか？
Mion's bloodstained hand groped around and found my wrist. Though her fingernails were torn, she gripped it hard, as if scratching me.
加減しろよ。痛いって。
ケイちゃん。迎えに来たよ。
I tried to shake my wrist loose, but the strength she held it with was unbelievable, and I couldn't. She was only gripping the one wrist, and yet my whole body wouldn't move. I couldn't even twitch. My fingers were spread apart, and I couldn't make a fist either. And the fact that I couldn't make a fist reminded me of her straining table. Was that all hallucination? I felt a crooked nail pressed against my left pinky tip. Oh no. God, that's so terrifying! Mion's forehead was split open. With her face covered in blood, she smiled and got up right behind me.
何も終わってない。何も終わってない。この事件は、何も終わってなんかない。まだ続いてる。まだまだ続いてる。誰か、この事件を終わらせてください。この残酷で無残で気の毒で悲しい。
Oh man.
この事件を終わらせてください。それだけが、俺の望みです。
あの時、一つ叶えてあげたでしょ？今度はダメ。
What does this mean? Mion firmly held the nail down on my fingertip. And with her other hand, she slowly swung a mallet up in the air and... Is that really how they end that? That's crazy. That's crazy. New standard's been unlocked. All cast review session. Alright, we've been here for ages. Let's do it. Select extra. The last nail. Complete Watanagashi. We're gonna go through extra even though it's making this an insanely long episode, but it's okay, it's a finale. We'll get through the end and then we can start the next chapter next week. All cast review session.
Higurashiの泣く頃に推、Watanagashiを最後までお楽しみいただき、誠にありがとうございました。
You know, the end of the first one was pretty mysterious. This one, just, what, was he just mad? Like, that's crazy. I do think, what I'm guessing happened is that Shion broke mentally, and I think that Mion died that day, but then Shion kind of became both herself and her sister, and so she came as Mion to stab us, and then threw herself out the window later that night.
今度のシナリオはいかがだったでしょうか？
I did. I like this one better than the first chapter, I think.
ちょっぴりでもお楽しみいただければ幸いです。ちょっぴりも何も、また大大バッドエンドですわ。
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the theme of this whole series.
プンプンでございますことよ。プンプンなのです。
いやー、みんなお疲れ。まあ、終わり方こそあれだったけど、今回のシナリオは事実上、ミオン編みたいなもんだったんじゃない？
Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
私大活躍で大満足。にゃはははは。
あんなの大活躍とは言いませんですわ。私もリカも殺されちゃったですのよ。しかもサトコはただのとばっちりなのですよ。
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
わあ、あんな死に方嫌なのですな。ほら泣かないで。みーちゃんメインのお話だったように、サトコちゃんメインのお話もあるんだから。
I'm sure.
よ 今から楽しみだね。
Yeah, there'll be one for Satoko, there'll be one for Rika. So that'd be, because it'd be chapter 1, chapter 2, then Satoko, Rika-chan, and then there's a 5th one, so maybe one surrounding Keiichi, and then a 6th one to be the finale, maybe?
きっと聡子がひどい目にあってじわりじわりといたぶり回される話に違いないね。
That's cruel.
そうなの嫌。みーちゃん、悪ふざけが過ぎるとレナもちょっとだけ怒るよ。みーがぺったんこなのです。なでなでしたくても頭がわからないのです。あ、膨らんできましたわ。無節操な体ですのね。
いやあみんなお疲れさん。
また遅れて申し訳ありませんね。
Yeah, let's hear your meta conversation here.
富武さんに大石さん、どうもお疲れ様でした。
I did know this story so far wasn't so much related to like curse or not curse.
あれ、高野さんとしーちゃんはまだですか？
もちろん来てますよ。今日はお招きいただきありがとうございますね。
Hey Shion, are you gonna be involved in any future stories or are you like a one-time thing?
ここ座ってもいい？
どうぞですわよ。
これだけ一堂に集まると圧巻ね。どうかお手柔らかに。
じゃあ始めても大丈夫かな。これで全員かな。
Alright. Well, Keiichi,
圭一を除けば全員なのです。
is he gonna call in again?
ってことは前原さんは相変わらず収録が終わってなくて早々に次回シナリオの台本読みなんですか？
気の毒な話ね。私たちだけで盛り上がっちゃ悪い気がするわ。
高野さん、そんなの気にしなくていいんですよ。こういう時は思いっきり盛り上がった方がかえって気を使わせないもんなんです。
それもそうですわね。せっかくこれだけ集まったのにお通夜じゃつまらないですわ。
Holding away could be boring.
じゃあ圭一君には悪いけど僕たちでやらせてもらおうか。
となれば決まりだね。じゃあみんなコップコップ。炭酸が嫌いな人いる？
大人の皆さんにはアルコールもありますよ。
リカちゃんは何を飲む？ブドウジュース？オレンジジュース？
みー富武のと同じ泡麦茶がいいのです。こーらリカちゃんもお酒はダメ。みんなコップ持ちましたですの？早く乾杯しないとジュースがぬるくなってしまいますわ。
Alright, so what's the toast supposed to be about, huh?
おね、温度は誰が取るの？レナでいいでしょ。じゃあレナよろしく。
ではゴン、みんな綿流し終了。お疲れ様でした。
お疲れ様でした。
Ah, clap, 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 clap.
じゃあみんな揃ったんだしね。また今回のシナリオを議論してみないかい？
Go for it. I gotta hear this.
そうですね。じゃあ自由意見でいきましょうか。誰か意見のある人はいますか？意見も何も今回のシナリオで謎は全て解けたのではありませんこと。
Oh, definitely not.
犯人はミオンさん。諸悪の根源は全部園崎家。それで決着でございませんの？そうだね。みーちゃんは犯人じゃないって信じてたんだけどな。
How do you figure that?
大穴ですよ。こんなのは前回の鬼隠しから十分予想できたことじゃないですか。むしろ予想通りすぎて呆れちゃうくらいですよ。
Yeah, it was fairly it's like straightforward in a lot of ways.
そうですね。前回のシナリオをプレイされた方の予想の大多数と合致するんじゃないでしょうかね。
I mean, that's true. That's like it was definitely most in line with my thought.
みんなの期待通りの展開になったみたいなのです。
Except for the ending.
じゃあこれで日暮の泣く頃に水のメインシナリオはほとんど終わりなのかな？
No, there was the way it ended, the fact that people who were dead apparently were still moving around and doing stuff and were seen doing stuff, and the syringe that was in Rika's pocket. Those are the three big mysteries.
すべての元凶はみーちゃんの園崎家で決まり？
そうかしら。私はむしろこれで園崎家犯人説はなくなったと思ってるくらいだけれど。
あ、高野さんと意見が合いましたね。私も同じ意見。私はタタリなんか信じないけど、
Yeah, exactly.
でも少なくとも園崎家が真犯人である確率は薄くなったと思ってるね。
Interesting. That's not the conclusion I came to.
どうしてなの？だってみーちゃんがみんなを殺したって自供したじゃない。そうですわ。私とリカを殺しておいて今さら犯人じゃないなんてどういう意味なんですの？
Are they gonna take the curse
別
angle,
に
the
煙に巻くつもり
demon?
はないよ。たださ、私ミオンが全ての犯人だとするにはいろいろと無理が多いんだよ。
Like I feel like Mion might not have been capable of doing it all, perhaps. And then like she also was so adamant to be like, "Yep, it was me." Like she was trying to protect somebody.
ちょっと考えればすぐわかるよ。
僕は園崎家犯人説の近からず遠からずに真相があると確信してるんだけど、ぜひミオンちゃんの説が聞きたいね。
ではご拝聴。ラストで私がさ、過去の事件に自分は全て関与しているって白状するでしょ？
Right.
あそこで感じた大きな違和感が根拠かな。だって考えてみなよ。過去の事件が園崎家の起こしたものならすごいことだよ。だってどれもほぼ完全犯罪でしょ？園崎家以外の犯人や事故で決着するという究極の犯罪だもの。そりゃそうでしょう。だって大きな力を持つ園崎家が暗躍してるんだもの。完全犯罪なんてお茶の子さいさいでしょ？
I mean, not child's play. Crimes are still crimes. They still leave evidence. There's no such thing as a perfect
そ
crime.
こそこ、そこが違和感なんだよ。過去4年間園崎本家の気配を全く感じさせずにあれだけ上手に人を殺したり消したりしてきたんだよ。そこへ行くと5年目の事件はすごくチープなんだよ。
That's true. This one was weird.
手当たり次第に片っ端から消して殺して、しかも園崎家とのつながりは簡単にカンパできちゃうしさ。
そう言われてみればそうだね。過去の事件はたたりとも犯罪ともつかない不思議な連続。今回の5年目の事件だけはすごく乱暴だったもんね。
Yeah, so something definitely changed this year. I always thought that was Mion, though. Mion stepping up and just like kind of going crazy with it all.
リカにはわかります？つまり園崎家が本当に犯人なら5年目の事件ももっともっと上手にやったと言っているのですよ。じゃあつまり何ですの？私とリカを殺したのはミオンさんではなく、ミオンさんに取り付いた鬼の仕業だったってことですの？ほらほら、やっぱり前回の私の予想通りミオンさんは悪い人じゃなかったのですわ。
No, she definitely was, though.
そうそう、レナもサトコちゃんも何かが取り付いて悪いことをしてるって意見だったもんね。じゃあやっぱり私たちの説は正しかったのかな？
私も前回から引き続きたたり説ですが、今回のシナリオでさらに確信を深めましたよ。
I don't know. I still don't like it.
ラストのラストで私が明かす、目撃されていたにもかかわらずその数日前に死んでいたという高野さんやミオンさんの情報はまさにそれを裏付けると思います。
I don't think it supports that theory, but I can see it being I can see why people would agree with that.
あらあら、前回は弱かったたたり派が今回は随分強気ね。人間犯人説の皆さんには反論はないのかしら？
I do. I absolutely disagree. My objection would be that it's entirely possible that Mion had died, but Shion had broken mentally, and that she took up the mantle of Mion in her fragmented state. And Keiichi also seemed to be pretty fractured at the end there. But the one thing I can't explain is the Takano mystery, because I'm like, who could be standing in for Takano? That's the one that really gets me.
前回人間犯人説だったのは確かみーちゃんにリカちゃん。
Also, like there's something really odd that if it was a curse and a curse was making Takano walk around as like dead but not dead, that would imply that the curse and like the spirit wanted them to go into the shed, right? Which would be against like what how can you break taboo of you shouldn't go in places you're not supposed to go if the one who enforces that mentality, like the entity, is the one that initiated it? That wouldn't make any sense. Like, that makes no sense with the tracking of the logic.
それから富武さんでしたよね。では張り切って反論をお願いします。
参ったな。うまい言葉が思いつかないな。
たたり派の根拠の一つが合わない死亡時刻なんですよね。じゃあそのトリックを崩せれば人間犯人説は立証できるわけですね。
Come on, Shion, prove it.
お、シオンには何かいい反論があるの？まあ一応。でも私、人間犯人説ではお姉と同じ意見ですけど、園崎家が主犯だと思ってる点ではお姉とは違いますよ。
So then who?
それでも良ければ反論してみせますけど。
何でも結構ですわ。これがたたりじゃないというなら、その証拠を示してごらんなさいませ。
じゃあシオンちゃん、さっきから話題になってるミオンちゃんは事件当日に井戸に落ちて死んでいたにもかかわらず、数日後に現れてケイイチ君とあなたを殺したのはどうやってなのかしら？
Like I said, I feel like there is a reasonable explanation for that. It's you that we don't have an explanation for.
ズバリ、園崎姉妹共犯説です。
Yeah, so I think Shion and I are on the same page.
理由は簡単。だってお姉はあの時点でもう死んでるんですから、ケイちゃんをさせるのは私しかいないんです。そして実質へ戻り、幽霊との取っ組み合いの狂言をして飛び降り自殺。
I don't think it was a pretended though. It would have been like she'd mentally broken.
強いて言えば、この場合のミオンちゃんは泥をかぶる役だね。村長さんたちに直接手を下し、シオンちゃんはただの被害者の形にする。そして井戸の中に姿を隠していれば、変装したシオンちゃんが神出鬼没にいくらでも殺人を犯せるって寸法さ。
Oh, wait a minute though. We were stunned, right? So what if what happened really was maybe there was more time than we anticipated? Because they never said where they found Shion, that she was locked in a cage. What if Mion stunned us, grabbed Shion, drug her to the well, and threw her down the well? Because if they were trying to match up like whose body they found, genetically they'd be the same. They'd look the same. So it's very possible that if Mion pretended to be Shion, claimed to be Shion, was then rescued from the cave, having thrown Shion down the well, saying it was Mion, who could have known? So maybe it was Mion the whole time. And then the fighting between the sisters that was overheard, it was Mion fighting with the demon, basically, or that part of herself. That makes actually more sense. It makes sense, like not what Shion was saying here, but that a swap happened where Mion pretended to be Shion and threw Shion down the well.
なるほどね。だとすると、ミオンさんにとっての誤算は2つ。死体が見つかってしまったことと、隠れているだけのつもりが死んでしまったこと。ってことになるわけですね。
あれれれ、確かになんとなく辻褄が合うような。
I think sister swap makes more sense.
でもやっぱり納得できないでしょう。過去の完全犯罪の華麗さと違いすぎるもの。その計画、たとえうまくいってもミオンは悪役でしょ。一生隠れて、あるいはシオンのふりをしたりして生きていかなきゃならないんでしょ。窮屈すぎ。こんなの完全犯罪とは言わないって。
つまり死ぬにせよ消えるにせよ、ミーはいなくなってしまうわけなのです。
リカちゃま、それいい意見。つまり園崎ミオンが表舞台からいなくなるのは彼女らのシナリオの一部だと思うわけです。
Whose plan?
だからラストでミオンはポンポンと過去の事件の罪をかぶるんですよ。
Okay.
全部の事件の責任を一身に引き受けて退場。
Then who would inherit after that?
そうすることで過去の事件の真犯人を隠蔽できる。
Maybe her grandma, but then it sounded like she killed her grandma. So who was she protecting?
つまり今年の事件はチープなんかじゃなく、過去の事件を丸ごと完全犯罪にするための締めくくりの事件。
And then that actually is in line with what was happening afterward, where they're trying to wrap up the incident. Like they let everything get drugged out, try to make it all focus on a single person, And then, like, they were trying to rush, like, through the inconsistencies.
そういう位置づけになるのかな。
一番疑われてる園崎家の若き当主が全てを自白して失踪。彼女もしくは園崎家以外の真犯人にとってこれほど美味しい結末はないってことになるのかしらね。
話が全然わかりませんのよ。ミオンさんが罪をかぶるってどういう意味ですの？犯人なんじゃないんですの？つまりね、連続開始事件の真犯人が別にいるの。その人を守るためにみーちゃんが過去の事件も全て自分が起こした
Yeah, but who would that be?
嘘の告白をしたってみんなは言ってるの。
Who would she be trying to protect?
これは劇中のセリフになりますが、とんだ名探偵さんがいたもんです。確かにちょっと説得力を感じますよ。
真の犯人をごまかすために起こした事件。それが私の推理。さらに言えば、その真の犯人は園崎家以外の存在だと思ってるんだけどね。
Well, then it would have had been one of the other families, right? But Rika and the mayor died, so who would it have been? Someone we haven't
4
seen
年
before?
連続で完全犯罪に成功した謎の人物をさらに守るためにミオンちゃんが起こした捜査撹乱の
そういうことです。鬼隠しのシナリオで名前だけ登場した監督ってのがかなり怪しいかな。
The director.
すごいです。実に辻褄が合いますのですよ。
私はそれでも園崎家プラス姉妹が犯人だと思ってますけどね。御三家による古いしがらみを断ち切るために姉妹が起こした過去の清算のための事件。それが私の推理です。
過去の清算ってのはつまり暗躍の歴史に終止符を打つため御三家の罪を最後の当主のミオンが全てかぶり姉妹揃って退場したってことだね。
そういうことです。私たち姉妹が悩みに悩み抜いた末に選んだ悲しい物語だったというわけです。
Yeah, but I feel like you wouldn't voluntarily been tortured for that.
できすぎですね。
すごいです。実に辻褄が合いますですよ。
Clap, clap, clap.
あれあれ、なんだかリカちゃんにも意見がありそうだね。リカちゃんもどうぞ。では皆さんに質問なのです。ケイイチはどうして刺されなければいけないのですか？
I think it was because it had to because he technically had broken the rule and they needed to make sure that people knew that you couldn't get away with it.
リカ、そんなのは決まってますわよ。入っちゃいけない細具店に勝手に入ったからに決まってますわ。
こうして思い返すと、他のシナリオでも死んだ富武さんと高野さんの死もきっと細具殿に忍び込んだせいってことなんでしょうな。
Yeah, that would track, honestly.
ありゃ
おかしなことになってきたわね。
おかしなことって何がですか？レナさん、そうですわ。思い出してくださいませ。
Oh, right. Tomitaka-san, she'd already died by that point, so why did she die?
そうなのです。例えば鬼隠しのシナリオではケイイチは細具殿には忍び込んでいないのに
That's also
命を
true.
狙われているのです。
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Murmur, murmur, murmur.
それはきっとほらHinamizawaはよそ者を嫌うんだろ。だからケイイチ君も命を狙われたんだよ。
I thought they went after him because he was observed talking to the police and you weren't supposed to do that.
それはおかしいでしょう。だったらケイちゃんの両親だって襲われていいはず。どう見ても両親に危機が迫っていたようには見えないね。今回だけでなく他のシナリオでも。
That's a good point, actually.
さあさあ、人間犯人説の皆様方、ケイイチさんが狙われる理由がちゃんと説明できませんと、人間が犯人とは立証できませんでしたよ。
Well, again, the reason there was because he was talking with the police and it seemed to be colluding with them.
でもたたり説だとしてもやはり前原さんが前回も今回も襲われる理由が分かりませんけどね。
もう一息で解明できそうだったけど、やっぱり謎はたくさん残ってるみたいだね。
Oh yeah, there are.
圭一くん以外の人の死には何かしら理由が見つけられるんだけど、
Yeah, weird.
鬼隠しでもたらい回しでも西宮殿に踏み入るのとは無関係に狙われてる。
では今回だけではなく他のシナリオでも殺されるようなことをしちゃってるんじゃありませんこと？
Okay, if that logic's true, like, what was he doing? Maybe just asking too many questions. That feels like a stretch,
なる
though.
ほど。他のシナリオと今回の前原さんの行動に共通項が見つけられれば、それが全体の事件の謎を解く鍵になりそうですね。
ざっとシナリオを読み比べたけど、圭一君なりに日々を送ってると思うよ。西宮殿の一件さえ除けば、圭一君の日々の暮らしに不審な点は見当たらないけどな。
Yeah.
圭一くん、今回と他のシナリオの時に何をやったのかな？
You asked questions? You talked to the police?
殺されるような悪いことを。
I don't know.
迷った時には本人に聞いてみるのが一番なのですよ。
Well, we know that's not going to be productive. Yeah, here he comes.
ほほう、俺が一人寂しく次回の台本読みをしている間に、みんなはそういう話題で盛り上がっていたわけか。ほう。
というわけなの。だからね、圭一くんの自分の胸に聞いてみてほしいんだけど。
ケイちゃん、殺されるようなどんな悪いことをやったわけ？
I don't know!
私にいつも働いている狼藉のせいに違いないですわ。僕に時々危ない視線を向けて妄想に浸っている顔はまさに犯罪者そのものなのです。
That's terrifying implication.
そうそう。年頃の女の子たちに囲まれて毎日幸せってのがそもそもの罪のような気がするな。
He's living that like presumptuous harem lifestyle. He must die. My cat's here. I'm sorry. I keep getting distracted because look at that paw. I don't know if you can see that. He's just right here. He's like, give me food. It's like, I'm not time to eat yet.
それは確かに重罪ですね。前原さん、実に羨ましい主人公役ですよ。たまには変わってください。
That's creepy.
まあ確かにあれだけ役得がいろいろあれば最後にちょっと刺されるくらいお安いご用よね。
Takano, that's terrifying.
というわけで圭一さん、あなたの犯した罪を思い出しまして。
今回も他のシナリオでも清く正しく生きてる俺がいつもラストはひどい目に。その上さらに自分の胸に聞いてみろだと。聞きたいのは俺の方だぞ。これは何かの謀略だ。
It feels like, okay, maybe there is something here. Because what did he do in both games? He lies. He lies, and he doesn't apologize or consider other people. I don't know if that's worth killing him over, but that's definitely the consistent. I think I going through to my head this whole time. That's the thing that was consistent is that he's lies.
かわいそうです。今度頭をなでなでしてあげますですよ。
Hey, stop it.
今回のシナリオを読んだ上で改めて鬼隠しを読むべきかな。
I mean, maybe. I don't know if I will, but I could see why you would.
私はミオンの立場になって綿流しを読み返してみるよ。ケイちゃんの立場で読んだ時とは違う発見があるかもね。
Ah, interesting.
私は鬼の仕業だとずーっと思ってますのよ。すべての現象とトリックはすべて鬼で説明がつきますのよ。
I think it's more likely mental illness.
なんだかプラズマみたいなのです。プレイしてくださった皆さんはどうお感じになりましたか？
Oh, fantastic. This chapter was great.
ぜひ先に進む前にいろいろと推理してみてくださいね。まだまだ先は長いですけど頑張ってくださいね。
Yeah, yeah.
それでは引き続き日暮らしの泣く頃に推をお楽しみください。
Oh, I will. Alright, that's the end of that? Okay. Might be time to end this, huh? Alright. Yep, enjoy Watanagashi after party. And that's where we're gonna end it. Wow, that's crazy. Again, it's nice that I don't have to do a wrap party for this because we already talked about so much. And I feel like I kind of got all my thoughts out there. But I guess in my brief summary, I'm still in the belief that it's human driven. The syringe with the formula that we saw the last game that makes people go crazy and kill basically to the point where they die. That's still a mystery, but I feel like maybe that implies that deaths via that method are by Rika. Maybe Rika and the Furode family are the ones who know the secret behind the syringe, which also could explain potentially if Rika hadn't died in the first chapter, maybe she was the one that came back and recovered and altered the note at the end of the last story. And then in this one, I still think that it's most likely a broken personality. And I think that it honestly does make sense if Mion killed Shion by throwing her down, but then pretended to be Shion to escape and tried to run away. And then she broke and mentally just kind of went to pieces, tried to finish the job and get everything taken care of and wrapped up because the demon, which was a part of her personality, just went mad. But that's my theory. I don't think it's a curse still. A lot of evidence points to that, but I do like the interesting point that they brought up that the two I'm going to consider is that number one, does it really make sense it was all Mion and the Sonozaki family? It doesn't. But the needle, the syringe being discovered, the Furudes definitely seem like they were involved, and I believe Rika probably was directly involved. She met an untimely end in this story, but it's fairly clear that she probably has been directly involved in the murders and has at least been partially a part of it. The second thing that I think is very odd is, besides the whole people being dead and still seemingly walking around and doing stuff, that just seems really wacky. I have no idea what that's all about. Then this idea too that it's too it's too closed if it's all just Mion. And remember I said before how she was talking in the house and she was speaking loudly outside, as if she knew the police were, when she knew the police were out there, saying, when she confessed, yes, I did it. She was, specifically talking to people outside. It was a performance. I thought at the time that was weird. And that does imply to me that there might be someone she's protecting. So who on earth would she be protecting? I have no idea. Feels like everyone who I could consider that she's protecting had died. So I don't know what that's all about. And then, obviously, the site at the end of the hospital, I think Keiichi just mentally had been broken. I almost don't know if that's worse than him being flat out being killed at the end of the first chapter. So, yeah. Interesting. I'm still on team humans. There's a tiny bit that could be cursed, but I feel like humans just makes way more sense. And I feel like it'd be a lot more satisfying if it were people being crafty, rather than it just being an enigmatic curse that just happens to be working these miracles by. I don't know. It's really interesting. I still don't understand why Mion did what she did, though. There's a lot of that's just so crazy and taken to such extremes. And Satoko and Rika, I don't understand why they both had to go. That's just it's not like it was panic basically, but still, it's just. There's definitely some weirdness in there, and I don't feel like I have all the satisfactory answers. So I'm looking forward to seeing new clues in the next chapter. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching this freakishly long one. Holy crap. Kudos to you. Thank you especially to the pages and members for your support of the channel directly. I'm doing my best to make as good a content as possible, and I want to make better content as we go. So thank you for your support, and it means the world to me, and I hope that you feel like it's a good investment. I'm looking forward to continuing the series. So next week, I should be starting the next chapter. I'm not sure what that chapter is called or who the character focus will be, but I'll find out when I get there. But anyway, it's time for me to wrap this up, go give my voice a break, and I got to go back to work in a bit, so I got to do that. So, yeah. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here today. Hope you enjoy yourself. And until the next video you watch with me, I hope to see me in next. I'll see you there.